The camera light's not on.
All right, welcome everyone to the March 18th, 2025 school board meeting for the Lakeville area schools. Please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we're going to call this meeting to order and start with a roll call of the board members, starting with my right.
Amber Cameron.
Brett Nicholson.
Paul Carbone.
I'm Matt Swanson.
Michael Bauman.
Kim Baker.
Carly Anderson.
Brian Thompson, School Board.
Thank you. Are there any additions requested to the agenda? If there are none, or there being none, I will make a motion to approve the agenda as drafted. Is there a second? All right, it's seconded by Director Cameron. Being a first and a second, all those in favor of approving the agenda as drafted, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, say nay. All right, it is approved unanimously. And then we'll turn it over to Superintendent Bauman for the good news.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome everybody. Good news from Lakeville School District. Lakeville South gymnasts springs her way to the top at state. Congratulations to Piper Keith, a sophomore from Lakeville South High School gymnastics team, on her incredible performance at the 2025 State Class AA Girls Gymnastics Meet. Piper demonstrated excellence and consistency in all four events, taking home third place in the all-around competition. Piper also showed greatness on the uneven bars, taking home a second place. So congratulations, Piper. Lakeville South boys hockey wrapped up a successful season at state. Congratulations to our Lakeville South High School boys hockey team on a terrific season. The Cougars boys hockey team took first place at their section tournament on February 27th and competed in the consolation bracket at the 2025 State Class AA boys hockey tournament on March 8th at the 3M Arena at Mariucci. Way to go, Cougars. We can applaud for that, can't we? Okay. If you want to read more about the amazing things happening in our district, isd194.org/news, and you can find it there. Next on my list of things I wanted to do is share with you a gentleman who's one of our teachers at Lakeville North, who's kind of a legend in his own mind. Just kidding, Kevin. No, he's Mr. Kevin Bass is here this evening, and I want to just highlight some of his work and what's been going on in our STEM program at Lakeville North High School. Before we bring Mr. Bass up to address the board and our audience, recently featured on Fox 9 News was a extraordinary project that our students are involved with, both from Lakeville North and Lakeville South, so both of our high schools. They've been working to build a custom chopper. For those of you who don't know what a chopper is, for an old military guy like me, that's something that flies in. But for everybody else, it's something that goes down the road on two wheels, maybe also known as an iron horse. They're going to build this custom chopper all the way through, and they're going to auction it off at the Sturgis Motorcycle Rally this summer. So I want to share that Fox 9 News video with you so everybody can kind of share in that experience. And then we'll have Mr. Bass come up. So I'm going to give my tech guy a minute to get that pulled up, and then we'll watch that. Maybe.
Many school districts across the metro, state, and country are currently working with tight budgets. A former Fox 9 top teacher we first met in Bloomington years ago has now taken what he's learned and applied it to a STEM program in Lakeville. He's bringing hundreds of thousands of dollars into his program while teaching students how successful trade work can be. Fox 9's Leah Bino had a lesson on how he's making it possible.
Almost immediately after stepping into this wing of Lakeville North High School,
this is where I want to be, you know. It's like the best class of the day.
it's clear this is not your average shop class.
You're looking at probably $30,000 in parts. Yeah, the motor alone is 15 grand.
How is that possible? Students from Lakeville North and South in this chopper class are building a motorcycle from scratch that will be auctioned off at the Sturgis Motorcycle Rally this summer.
Because we want that pipe to be straight across.
At the same time, school district budgets are tighter than a lug nut. Kevin Bass has figured out a way to use the roughly $8,000 budget allocated by his school district for his welding and various classes and turned it into hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of tools and materials for his students. From a water cutter that slices stone and granite
I think we're the only high school right now that has one.
to six-figure pieces of donated equipment filling the space.
BTD is a local company here in Lakeville, big manufacturing company. I reached out to them, said, hey, I'm the new teacher here. I'm going to be teaching kids how to weld, manufacture. I need help. And they said, what do you need? And I said, well, I really would, we didn't have a nice plasma at the time. I said, I really would like a big 4x8 CNC plasma to do stuff with. The president, Paul, came over from BTD, looked through the shop and said, shook my hand and said, oh, you pick one out and we'll order it. Order it and bought it for us. So it was like my first month here as a new teacher and I already got that. So it was like, okay, we're on to something. Let's keep the ball rolling.
From there, Bass expanded with power coating equipment, woodworking. The list goes on and on and on. With more students enrolling, Bass has contributed to the district adding another teaching position and even more manufacturing opportunities. The 3D printer collection, yet another example. 16, you said?
60.
60?
Yeah.
60?
60.
Oh, 60. I thought you said 16. Wow. Yeah, that's impressive.
I found out back in the early days, like when the money runs out, you get so much money a year for your class to buy consumables, welders, fix things, do whatever. When that runs out, you're okay, well, figure something out. Without any money, you can't buy any more material. If you run out of shield gas, how do you weld? You know, if you run out of wire for your welders, how do you weld? So I decided, okay, this is how much money I'm going to get. What can I do to make a little more to really make sure I got enough to sustain the whole year and do extra things instead of the bare minimum? I could shift.
In the span of his life and career, Bass has handmade dozens of bikes. He's constantly making connections and organizing sponsors for his program far and wide. Stars ranging from Richard Petty to Jason Momoa or Aquaman are fans of Bass and his work. These days, he has more than 20,000 followers on social media, cheering on his support for the next generation of machinists.
Hey, how you doing? Welcome back.
The day we visited Bass in class, he was also conducting an interview for his partnership with a Dennis Kirk film crew. The company is one of the leaders in the bike parts world and based out of Rush City. Years ago, students used to build bikes and take them apart as part of their lessons. But now, Dennis Kirk is supplying the parts for the motorcycle project, checking the progress, and filming segments along the way leading up to auction day, and serving as a dual purpose, ensuring the bike is put together right.
From my freshman year, I have looked in that motorcycle shop and it's like, man, I wish they had that program. And senior year, it's like a dream come true, you know? Back in, back at it.
Bass says the dream come true is all his.
It makes my soul sing, you know. I can't put it in words almost without crying about how hard the battle's been, and now it's to a place where I'm on top of this little mountain looking down going, awesome. Look at what we've accomplished.
Leah Bino, Fox 9.
I've always been into
Kevin, sir, this is the gentleman who you just saw in the video. I tease him a little bit, but just wanted to give him an opportunity to share with the board a little bit more about what he's been up to. And Kevin, the floor is yours, sir.
Well, thank you for having me tonight. Appreciate it. Appreciate all the support. You know, it's just a lifelong journey to help kids do the best they can. And, you know, I feel honored that I teach for a district that really cares about what we do and supports me. And I've had, you know, a lot of students go on that have taken my classes that weren't your traditional four-year college, maybe didn't fit in the mold, and we found good career paths for them. And I just, you know, I feel blessed and honored to be able to help kids find their career path. sorry, I get a little choked up, but it means a lot to me, and I'm very honored to be part of this district and have all the opportunities that you allow me to give our students.
Can
Well
I say
said, sir.
something real
Sure.
quick? So I know Mr. Bass because he had my son in class. And Shane is not one of those typical students. And when he was diagnosed with autism when he was little, they told us, I don't even know, Mrs. Baker, if he'll ever be able to attend school. Like, we just don't know if that's in the cards for him. And he met Mr. Bass in the welding program. And Shane is enrolled in DCTC in the welding program and starts next fall. And that's because of Mr. Bass. So he's not only teaching kids how to weld and is this wonderful, enthusiastic teacher, but he's also given Shane a chance at a career and something that he can be independent as an adult. So thank you so much for doing that. And that's all for you. Thanks.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. We're going to move on to public comment. The board will open up the floor for 30 minutes to allow the public to address the board with comments and concerns. To participate in public comment, individuals must have registered in advance using the form provided on our district website. You have to register by noon on the Monday before the scheduled public comment section. There will be no board response during the session. Public comments framed as complaints and/or concerns about students and/or staff are not appropriate in a public forum due to the data privacy laws. These comments should be addressed to the administration outside of a public meeting. Likewise, complaints about the school board members should be privately directed to the board chair and/or the superintendent. No formal action will be taken on a topic presented during public comment. As necessary, the administration will follow up with the appropriate personnel on any concerns that need to be individually addressed. Also, if necessary, the board will follow up during board communications at the next regularly scheduled board meeting. Individual remarks are limited to 3 minutes, and the board will provide a signal when the participant has 30 seconds remaining of their time. There is your signal. Please try to keep audience noise to a minimum to allow everyone the opportunity to speak uninterrupted. All right, I think we have fewer than 10, so everyone will be able to speak if you signed up today. We're going to start off with Lindsay.
Hi everyone, my name is Lindsay Witt. I have a 4th and 5th grader at Eastview Elementary. I'm also a licensed CPA, which means I spend my time interpreting a lot of data and planning for the future based on that data. I'm also on the board at Eastview and on the PTO board at Eastview, and this has been quite a rebuilding year for our school. We've got the Eastview principal right over there. Half of our Eastview community has changed this year as a result of the attendance area adjustments that were passed just a year ago. That 50% of students also translated to 4 of our 7 PTO board members. I should be at an Eastview PTO board meeting right now, but instead I'm here. And I'm here because every problem that these new attendance area adjustments are trying to solve was knowable and called out last year as part of that process. I stood here a year ago, along with a strategic planning executive and a CEO and president of Lakeville Business, and said that based on the data, the models wouldn't be able to serve our community for more than 2 to 3 years. And now here we are, a year in, already contemplating additional changes. I know this is a new board and a different superintendent, so I hope you'll take the opportunity to do better this time. Unfortunately, from what I see, we're not off to a great start. Let me paint the picture of what the preliminary attendance area adjustment would mean for my neighborhood. The home across the street from me would attend one middle school, while my kids would attend another. You'd send one bus to bring our next door neighbor to Century, and another bus to bring my kids to Kenwood. You would ignore the fact that our neighborhood has a walking path and a crosswalk to access Century, and instead send my kids across a 4-lane highway to Kenwood. You would literally draw a line down the middle of our street, separating kids who throw a football between their yards. My son's best friend would be at a different school than he is. I don't think any of you could say that makes a lot of sense or is in the best interest of our community. But most concerning is that these adjustments still fail to address the actual capacity issue, that McGuire Middle School is significantly under capacity, while Kenwood and Century are both at 90+%. Moving kids between Century and Kenwood does not address that problem. So here's my ask. Focus on changes that actually address the capacity issues. Consider proximity to schools and safety. Spend the time to thoughtfully solve the problem with minimal disruption for Lakeville students. Every time there is a change, a PTO is forced to rebuild, a student is moved to an unfamiliar environment, a parent has to learn to navigate a new school, a school board has to listen more about attendance area adjustments.
30 seconds.
Residents need to scramble and rearrange their schedules to try to have their voices heard. I understand it's not easy. I know it's a hard process, but I do expect a rational, thoughtful solution that makes sure we aren't here again a year from now. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. Next up is Josiah. Josiah. Moving on, Kirsten, sorry.
As a nurse who provides public health services to the Lakeville community, I have come today with the intention of promoting accountability and transparency around health insurance decisions which impact not only staff of Lakeville area schools, but subsequently our students and our neighbors. To that end, at the February 11th school board meeting, an alarming comment was made by Vice Chair Paul Carbone. Healthcare costs are egregiously and prohibitively high. Yet, rather than being knowledgeable about how the district has been working to avoid major spikes in employee premiums, or asking about strategies to improve outcomes and achieve greater net savings through better preventative and mental health coverage, Vice Chair Carbone practically did the opposite by interjecting the suggestion that there are insurance carriers which can, quote, drive claims down. To be clear, we all know that the need for care stays the same, so the outcome of that approach would be less reimbursement and/or more claims being denied, essentially suggesting to hoard more money staff already pay into their insurance premiums at the expense of worse coverage of their medical bills, meaning higher out-of-pocket costs for teachers who are already underpaid in proportion to their return on investment to society, causing custodial staff who keep kids safe by sanitizing school spaces to be more worried about not being able to afford to seek care when feeling ill during that year's flu season. Claim denial is ultimately detrimental for everyone involved. It's bad for staff and their families reaping fewer benefits from their benefits package, bad for students and their academic excellence to have more stressed and less healthy teachers, bad and costly for the district and taxpayers by potentially risking decreasing state funding if pupil counts are lower due to kids of staff being out sick or needing to pay for critical, albeit more substitute teachers for the same reasons. In a time of expanding division and polarization, there has nonetheless been unified public disdain and denunciation of health insurance practices to deny, delay, and depose claims, with growing collective resentment, which recently had grave implications for a company headquartered right here in Minnesota. With this backdrop, Vice Chair Carbone's line of thinking was shockingly incongruent with shared public sentiment and also just so antithetical to the good of the district. But after uncovering that Paul's career consisted of executive leadership roles in several health insurance companies, including Blue Cross Blue Shield, companies driven by profit over people, it suddenly made sense. I implore you to think about your loved ones and your medical bills if you're ever confronted with Paul Carbone's name on a ballot.
I think the instructions were clear. It's not a place to come and criticize board members. I mean, if you want to send us private messages via email, you're more than welcome to do so. Okay.
It's holding publicly elected officials to account.
You are more than welcome to your opinion, but I'm not going to let you sit up here and criticize a board member. So you can take your seat, please.
Comment made at a board meeting. Thank you for your time.
All right, moving on. Jamie and Tisha.
Dear members of the school board, we appreciate the opportunity to speak with you tonight.
My name is Jamie Kicker.
And my name is Tisha Searing. We are both educators in this district and are here to express our strong support for the continued use of iPads in our elementary classrooms, in our elementary classrooms, and to advocate for a dedicated digital media specialist in our buildings. We are aware of the capital projects levy, which will be used for renewal soon. This levy will provide funding for technology and digital tools, which is why we feel this is the right time to emphasize the importance of these resources in our schools.
iPads are not just devices, they are powerful tools for engagement, creativity, and equitable access. In our classrooms, we see firsthand how technology integration enhances student learning. iPads allow students to create, collaborate, and demonstrate understanding in ways that paper and pencil simply cannot. Through interactive learning apps, multimedia projects, and real-time feedback, students become active participants in their education rather than passive consumers of information.
For our English language learners, iPads are a game changer. With translation tools, speech-to-text features, and visual supports, these students can access content alongside with their peers, building confidence and independence instead of feeling left out, behind, less empowered.
Additionally, iPads strengthen family communication. Digital portfolios and classroom apps provide parents with a window into their child's learning, fostering a stronger homeschool connection. Families can see their child's progress, receive real-time updates, and engage in meaningful conversations about their education.
Most importantly, iPads allow for individualized learning. Whether a student needs additional support or an extra challenge, teachers can provide personalized learning experiences tailored to individual needs. This ensures that every child is met where they are and can reach their full potential.
However, technology is only as effective as the support behind it. That is why we also need a dedicated digital media specialist in our buildings, someone who can provide training, troubleshooting, guidance to both teachers and students. This role is crucial in ensuring that technology is used intentionally and effectively to maximize learning outcomes.
30 seconds.
We understand the concerns about screen time and responsible use, and we share those concerns, but technology is not going away. Our students are growing up in a digital world, and it's our responsibility to prepare them to navigate it safely and effectively. Removing iPads or limiting their use would be a step backward, taking away opportunities for engagement, creativity, and equity in our classrooms.
With the capital projects levy providing funding for technology, we urge you to continue investing in our students' future by supporting iPads in our schools and ensuring that educators have the resources they need, including a digital media specialist to implement technology in a meaningful and purposeful way. Thank you for your time and your commitment to our student success.
Thank you. Brian?
Good evening. I'm Brian Cohen. I've been a resident of Lakeville in the school district for about 12 years now. I'd like to thank Chair Swanson and Superintendent Baumann for responding to the emails that I've had over the last few days. They've been very fruitful and constructive conversations. This evening, I would like to talk a little bit about the new posters. They'll be the subject of the board discussion later this evening. The district staff, I think, should be commended for their quick work in developing a proposal based on the motion that was passed and the request from a few weeks ago. I reviewed the proposal and I have some positive reactions, some opportunities for improvements, and some questions about the process. First, the good news. I think the posters that are focused on inclusion are, I think, quite subjectively similar to the ones that we've had in the past, and I think that they're doing a good job of promoting the commitment that the district and the board has to ensure that all are welcome. And now a little bit on opportunities. As I was knocking doors last summer and running for office, I talked to a surprisingly large number of people of color who were concerned whether their children were, in fact, truly welcome here in our school district. This included one family that felt that the environment was so hostile that they chose to enroll their student in another school. I'm therefore concerned that we may need some posters and action in the district, as Director Baker had suggested, in that to really demonstrate that we are supporting and want to include all of our communities of color here in ISD 194. And finally, some open questions. It's obvious to me that the posters centered on academic excellence are trying to convey that message. But I'm not sure that the message would necessarily be received that way. Now, I hope that the poster creators have shown samples to students and gotten some reactions to the process. And I think with some feedback, we can make those posters even better than they are. And as we all know, all communication has two sides, a sender and a receiver. And we need to take the time to ensure that the receivers are getting the message that is intended. Finally, when the posters were discussed a few weeks ago, concerns were raised about the process by which the previous set of posters were approved, especially that not enough time was taken and that not enough stakeholder input was included. I'm concerned that we may fall into that trap again, and I understand the convenience and the desire to put up the new posters while over spring break. We want to make sure that we are taking the time to have posters that truly convey what we want to convey to the students. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, last speaker, Amber.
Hello, Superintendent Bauman and members of the board. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Amber. I am the mother of 2 students in Lakeville schools. I am a former special ed teacher, a dedicated district volunteer, an engaged parent, and a passionate advocate for students with disabilities. I debated whether to speak tonight about the poster series, given the many pressing issues affecting students with disabilities, compared to the severe shortage of special education teachers and service providers, the nationwide challenges to 504 plans in 17 states, the proposed dismantling of the Department of Education, attempts to eliminate diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility efforts, and the reduction in Medicaid funding, all of which directly impacts our students. The discussion about posters may seem minor. However, I am here because local action matters and our students matter. Over the past 4 years, as my oldest child entered the school system, I have attended numerous school board meetings. One message has remained consistent from students, educators, and much of the community. We value diversity and inclusion in our schools. We want our classrooms, our staff, our leadership, and even the posters in our hallways to reflect the diverse makeup of our community. Tonight, I urge you to reconsider the complete removal of the poster series. If 2 posters are in question, why not address those specifically instead of replacing all of them? While I appreciate the hard work completed by district staff at the direction of the board to create a new poster series, the decision to start from scratch has created confusion and frustration among students, parents, and staff. Once again, Lakeville and its public schools have been pulled into negative media attention, both traditional and social media. It is disheartening that conversations about our community now come with warnings about a resistance to diversity and inclusion. This perception does not reflect the views of most Lakeville residents, and many of us are working hard to change that narrative. The funds that would be used to replace these posters could be better spent on initiatives that promote awareness, acceptance, and inclusion. That money could support programs that make school activities more accessible for students with disabilities or fund initiatives that foster kindness and friendship. I firmly believe that the current posters contribute to a positive learning environment in our schools. Their messages matter. I think it sends a community-building message that we are stronger together. I also feel that everyone is welcome, everyone belongs, while similar to make everybody feel like a somebody takes the emphasis off an action needed by someone and turns it into something that is a part of our schools regardless. I ask you to reconsider your vote and truly listen to the broader community. We encourage our students to be brave and take risks. Now is the time for this board to lead by example. For the past decade, Lakeville has been a leader in inclusion. We are the first district to implement Inclusive Schools Week. Each year we recognize teachers, students, and staff who promote inclusivity. We are one of the few, if not the only, special education PTOs in the country, which has fostered community among families of students with disabilities while strengthening advocacy, awareness, and inclusion in our district. While there is always room for growth, we should be building upon our legacy, not retreating from it.
Thank you, Amber.
Wow, that was like right on time.
All right, that concludes public comment. We're going to move on in the agenda to consideration of the approval of the consent agenda. I'm going to start off. I would like to remove the approval of the auditing comment or auditing contract for discussion. Any interest in removing the board minutes, or are we good just approving the board minutes? I would make a motion to approve the board minutes from March 11th, 2025, and then move on to discussion of the auditing contract.
I'll second that.
That's seconded by Director Carbone. Being a first and a second, all those in favor of approval of the board minutes from March 11, 2025, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, say nay. All right, it is approved. I guess who, Mr. Holmgren, or who would be
Do you
the...
have a question on the...
I do.
Okay. Bill, you want to come up?
First, I just want to comment that I appreciate you sending these out and doing the RFPs on this. I understand it's a 3-year cycle or something that we do it for.
Yes, that's pretty common in school districts where we go out for 3 years at a time for an auditing company to come in. By law, we have to have an auditing firm come in each year and audit our books. Of course, this past year, our contract is expired. So we sent out an RFP about 8 weeks ago. We received 2.
So for the benefit of the audience, RFP, I know most of you know what it is, but a request for a proposal. And it's the requirement on auditing is an independent auditor, so not associated with the school district. So I just want to make sure those points are clear.
Anyway, through the process, we received 2 proposals. We did get some information from a couple other auditing firms, but they didn't feel they had the capacity to take on another school district at this time. So we just had the 2. One was our current auditor, and the other was just the most previous auditor we've used in the past. So we're familiar with both of these auditing firms. If you look at the matrix we put together, they were very close, and we feel that the better value was with CLA, with the business team that went through the proposals. So we are presenting tonight to the board to offer a contract to CLA for the next 3 years to do our auditing for the school district.
And I guess on the cost-wise, that was my question. It looks like Bergen from a maximum contract price might be less, but CLA then has the higher maximum contract price, but their individual workers or their employees charge less per hour.
Yeah, there's more hours involved with the CLA, and the difference is only $400 between the 2 different proposals.
At the end of the day, that's what you're calculating?
It's only $400.
Okay. Director Thompson, did you have a question?
Yeah, can you clarify that? Because when I was looking at it, I think I saw the proposal one with that was for $51,000 for the first year and $66,000. So maybe I wasn't looking at the other stuff. Help me understand.
The Bergen proposal had a second set of numbers that has the single audits that we have to do on a yearly basis, where CLA put it all into one number. We had asked the proposal to come in all in one number, so that's one reason they got marked a little less, Bergen did, because they came in 2 different numbers. Okay. But when you put them all together, there's only a $400 difference between the 2.
When you say put them all together, is it the cost that they're charging per fund?
No, when they audit us, they look at all our funds. But federal dollars that we receive from the federal government, they have to pick at least one of our programs. Any program that's over $500,000 in a particular year, they do a single audit separate just on the federal funds. And because of the size of the district we are and the numbers of funds that we get, we actually have to do 2. So most of the time our student nutrition fund is almost entirely federal funds, so that's usually done on a yearly basis. And then we look at our special education. We get about $2.5 million for special education from the federal government. So that's a second single audit that needs to be done on a yearly basis.
Director Thompson?
Yeah, was Bergen KDV not meeting any of the requirements in the past, or were they meeting all the requirements? This is strictly if it's only a couple $100 difference, why would we want to make a shift to a new entity? There's a learning curve. There's other components that come up that's associated with it. Just curious.
Yeah, I like to answer that. So, and Bill, obviously you can too. For the learning curve, CLA doesn't have one. They've been here before, 3 years ago. There might be some minor tweaks with regard to that. I think it's good to not get into a iterative cycle too long with any one auditor in order to maintain the efficacy of the reporting that we get and what gets looked at. Because as you know, they do the whole prepare by client piece and what they're looking at in terms of sampling changes, and I think that's healthy for a district. And that's my why from my perspective.
Director Thompson.
And again, just to make sure, again, to clarify, Bergen they were meeting all the requirements. You're just like, you're changing lawn service companies, and it's like, hey, the cost is about the same. They're mowing the lawn. It's not that big of a deal, right? Is that my interpretation?
Yeah, I guess I'd like to reiterate that CLA was here just 3 years ago, and the team they're putting together to come back here are almost entirely the same team. So it is the same group that we've worked with in the past.
Okay. And we're looking. You said there was a couple $100 difference between.
Yeah, between one and the other.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Thanks a lot, Mr. Holmgren. I think that's where. If there are no other questions, I'd entertain a motion to approve the auditing contract for Clifton Larson Allen.
Motion to approve.
All right. There's a motion by Director Cameron to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Baker. There being a motion to approve the auditing contract with Clifton Larson Allen, first by Director Cameron and seconded by Director Baker. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed say nay. All right, so approved unanimously. We'll move on to our reports and discussions, starting with the area attendance update. I believe Ms. Brovold and Mr. Nenau are coming up.
So as they're getting ready, I just would like to say a couple words about this and acknowledge some of the comments that we've received. So it's March, and we know that we have student concentration issue at Century Middle School, and we have that also at Highview Elementary. And the challenge we're going to have today is not significantly different than we had in the school district in the 90s when we were building schools along IPAVA. Some people in the audience may remember that. One of the things that we are faced with strategically is we have two middle schools that are not full, and we have one that is full. And that challenge in and of itself, and I think we had a speaker here earlier today that acknowledged all that. The other side of the coin that you have to look at, I think, as well, is what do you do when your geospatial relationship to your facilities are what they are? And I know that's the issue is about the how, not the what. And so hopefully we'll go through the numbers as we have put together here, and this is the first opportunity to talk about it with the board. It is not up for approval. We're not asking for any votes. We are seeking input from the board with regard to what we could look at in terms of refinement. Ultimately, the challenge is if we overfill Century Middle School and underfill the other schools, I don't think we're serving our community appropriately, because the alternative is to build something. And to build something in the current scenario that we exist in, all our lease levy dollars are, lease levy is an option to put additions on facilities. And that doesn't necessarily directly burden taxpayers through any particular levy. Bonding does, and I won't get into all the nitty-gritty details of that, but we have used our lease levy until 2028, where we will have a little bit more opportunity there, but not on scale for this school district. And that was due to the process that we went through to absorb the growth of our elementaries and put Highview Elementary online. So in 28, that will dissipate in terms of our lease levy and give us some more options. But I don't think any taxpayer, well, there may be a few, but most taxpayers in Lakeville, I don't think, want to spend money on a building when we have empty buildings or not full buildings. So I can't see that as a strategic play for our school system. So we do have to move students. And if our community, which I live in, begins to grow at a accelerated pace, A, we have to see it coming, and B, it means that we will have to do this again. The school district will have to do this again. I know that's an unpopular thing to say. And back to the comments, yes, the how matters, and we're trying to get that right. So we do welcome the input and the criticism, or however you want to couch it. But we want to start talking about it in March, so we're not talking about it in July and August and trying to get a vote. So that's the context of what we're speaking to here today. If you look on the agenda, just to help our public understand, and again, hope I'm not speaking out of turn here too much, but the way our agendas work, if you see a recommended action, that's going to require a vote. If you see something that's under reports and discussion, that's not a vote, and that's for staffing. And one of the challenges we have as a administration is how do we bring that to the board in a staffing process, which should be a process. The administration should not bring something to the board and say, give me a vote on really anything. There should be a process backing that up, and we can improve our processes, of course. And I just want to say that to put context to this so that we can have a good, healthy discussion today and into the future so that we can get as close to right as we possibly can. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you for entertaining that.
Okay, well, they tell me this microphone's going to work. Is that working?
Sounds like it.
Or no?
I heard.
Not so good?
It doesn't sound like it.
No? Pulling this over. We'll keep it in the middle. Okay. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to present to you today. My name is Tracy Brovold, and I get the privilege of being the Director of Technology and Data Services for our district. And next to me is Douglas Nenow, who is our Information Systems and Data Supervisor. Today we are here to share with you our presentation on attendance area adjustments. Last year, with the opening of Highview Elementary, we faced a difficult but necessary task of adjusting school attendance areas. We knew from the start that this would be a very complex and deeply impactful process for many families. Change is never easy, especially when it affects where our children learn and build connections. That's why we partnered with TeamWorks International. They are an experienced firm specializing in school attendance area adjustments. We partnered with them to help guide us through this process. While no attendance area change is without challenges, our goal was to ensure that our decisions were thoughtful, data-driven, and aligned with our district's long-term goals, not made in reaction to pressure or emotion. At the center of this process was a document called the Guiding Change Document. This document was developed by district leadership, administrators, and ultimately approved by the school board. This was a framework that provided clear principles that helped us to prioritize equitable access to resources and opportunities, maintain neighborhood school continuity whenever possible, efficiently allocate resources, including class sizes, staffing, and transportation. We fully acknowledge that this transition was very difficult on some of our families. Every data point in this process represents a real child with real experiences, and we kept that in the forefront of our minds. Balancing the individual impact with the needs of the district as a whole was not easy. While we do believe that this process met its core objectives, attendance area adjustments require ongoing refinement, and that was part of our decision-making process. While it's important to allow time for the changes to settle and then give ourselves a chance to assess the impact, and then we need to make refinements more where needed. So today, we'd like to take a closer look at this process and discuss next steps to ensure our attendance areas continue to best serve our students and our community. That's okay. Adjusting school attendance areas isn't just drawing lines on a map. It really is an intensive, complex process requiring months of careful analysis, collaboration, and problem solving. The Guiding Change document that I talked about had over 20 components that we needed to meet. For example, the document outlines wanting to keep neighborhoods together, balance demographics, keep students in appropriately sized learning environments, minimize disruption for families, and ensure efficient transportation routes that are also cost-effective. One of the biggest challenges that we had was the close proximity of school buildings, which Superintendent Baumann just referenced. I remember when I first came to Lakeville, I had asked for a map of all of our schools, where they were located, and one of my tech team members told me, you don't need a map, just drive down Ipava and you'll hit half of them. So they are very close, and with that level of closeness, combined with the rapid growth that was concentrated in one area of Lakeville, really made finding the right balance even more challenging. Another challenge that we faced, and it was one that both our team struggles with and TeamWorks International struggles with, is predicting student enrollment in newly developed single-family housing areas. It's hard to tell how many kids are going to be coming in a house that was just built. We also had some financial considerations. Transportation costs needed to be factored in to make sure that we proposed sustainable solutions. The process actually involved designing and evaluating 12 different models. The design team developed several models and then brought them to the input team for feedback, received feedback from the community, and then the design team met again to create new models incorporating the feedback. The process was repeated several times over. Each of the iterations or adjustments were scrutinized for feasibility and for fairness. Some of you, I know, had the opportunity to sit in on both the design and input team meetings. If you'll remember, it was intensive work, and it required a lot of data analysis, input from interested parties, and really, really tough decisions. Every change seemed to have a ripple effect. Every decision required balancing competing needs. The final plans that were presented to the school board weren't just a compromise. They were the result of months of dedicated effort to find the best possible solutions. What you're seeing on this slide is a snapshot of just how much time went into and effort went into this process. Each of these meetings represents hours of discussion, analysis, and decision-making, balancing priorities that were often in conflict. The design team consisted of over 20 people who were a cross-section of Lakeville Area Schools administrators, principals, directors, and supervisors, including our transportation provider. This was the team that generated the different attendance area models. The input team consisted of over 50 people, including a separate group of Lakeville Area Schools administrators, principals, staff members, and community members. You can see how many times the design team met and then how many times the input team met here on this slide. Feedback was welcome from our community through an online form which accepted responses on 3 different occasions that you see listed here. You can see that we received a large number of responses, which were all reviewed by both the input and the design teams. The design team went through each piece of feedback received from the input team and from the community, and they tried to figure out how to address each piece of that feedback. They really took their job seriously and wanted to honor the feedback that we received from our community and our input team. Even with a structured framework, guiding principles, and expert support from TeamWorks International, this was very challenging work. And this slide illustrates just how much time, thought, and feedback went into every step of the process. We did spend a lot of time before we came to consensus about the 2 models that we brought forward to the school board for their decision and approval. This slide shows the district's elementary school boundaries before our recent adjustments. Looking at this patchwork of attendance areas, it's clear that we had a complex and fragmented system. Each color on here represents a different elementary school area, so you can see how scattered and intricate some of the areas had become. It's visually overwhelming. And so you can imagine what this meant for families who were trying to navigate which school they were going to be going to. This is not what the map initially started to be. Douglas was here way back when. You've been here 20 years. He was here and was a part of seeing those original boundary maps. We had clean lines. But growth happened in Lakeville, and we were able to sustain this map for over 10 years without moving any students. It became a patchwork. The map served us well, but growth patterns have changed, and it became less effective. Prior to the construction of Highview, we actually did try to mitigate the increased enrollment. Additions were built onto 5 of our 8 elementary schools at the time to increase capacity, but that wasn't enough. Over time, the housing developments, shifting enrollment patterns, and those capacity issues created imbalances. Some schools were near capacity while others had room to grow. Transportation routes became more complicated, which impacted efficiency and costs. I know that we had families that were placed in schools that were sometimes further away from their homes, and students drove past one school to get to their school where they were enrolled. We tried to do everything we could to minimize student movement over the last 10 years. But these attendance area adjustments were designed to simplify this complex web of student boundaries while trying to balance student stability. As we look and compare our attendance areas for this year, we can see that this map not only provides clearer, contiguous lines, but also prioritizes efficient transportation. We worked hard to ensure that the new attendance areas balance demographics, ensuring fairness and accessibility for all. This approach helps reduce our transportation costs while maintaining a diverse and equitable distribution of students. We see the same thing for our middle school attendance areas. Again, for 10 years, this map sustained us. You'll see here, yellow is our Century Middle School attendance areas. Bluish is our Kenwood Trail, and I think we agreed that salmon is McGuire. These also have a little bit of a patchwork look, but it was designed to accommodate new growth and new housing developments over time without moving any current students for 10 years prior. We have not had any additions on our middle schools to be able to create additional classroom space. So with shifting enrollment, transportation challenges, and we also have a little bit of a proximity issue between Century and Kenwood Trail, the old attendance areas just no longer met the needs of our communities. Here, you will see our new attendance areas. You'll see, again, Century is in yellow, Kenwood in blue, and McGuire is in salmon. This updated attendance map not only provides clearer, contiguous lines, but also helped us to prioritize efficient transportation. The goal of these new adjustments were to simplify the system and create a more balanced structure that better aligns with our students' needs. Douglas is going to jump in now and add some data.
Yes. So before we move on, if you could go, that's all right.
No.
Nope.
Nope, I can go back.
There we go. One of the things to highlight is the map you see on the right was not just drawn up in one day. It was drawn, redrawn, redrawn over a decade of growth of 1,000 students that we were able to accommodate without having to move any existing enrolled students. We did value minimal disruption as much as we possibly could until we could no longer sustain the patchwork quilt.
Okay.
With this next one, and before I go farther and forget again, thank you again for the opportunity to be here and presenting this information to you. This chart here that we have, capacity with predicted and actual counts, has the schools that were impacted by the changes. The high schools were not changed last time, nor is there a proposal to change things this time. So we're looking at the elementary and the middle schools. You'll see that we have the capacity of the building with the actual 2025 fall enrollment numbers, so the October numbers from this last year, this current school year. The predicted numbers from the model, Model D3, which we'll show here in a little bit, and then the percent difference in the percent of capacity. So we highlighted some things. You'll notice that as far as differences between predicted and actual enrollment, all of the numbers came within plus or minus 10%. Not great, but not horrible either. There were two outliers to that. You'll see that Highview was 14.8% off, coming in at 658 instead of 573. You also see that Orchard Lake came in above what we predicted, 390 instead of 348. That was good news, that we actually got more students into Orchard Lake than we were anticipating. We did have some concerns about that, and it was good news to have some more students there. However, not so good news on the Highview side, which is why we're here tonight, along with the Century Middle School. You'll see that I have those two numbers highlighted, the 658 for Highview and the 950 for Century, to bring us to the next slide.
Hey, Doug. When you share those percentages, can you share what is considered a target number we want to hit from a percentage capacity? What is considered too many kids? I mean, obviously, can we get to 100, or is 90 the sweet spot?
Well, I think about this weekend and traveling to visit my parents up north, and they thought for sure that we were going to be swamped in a blizzard and go into the ditch and crash and everything else. The predictions didn't pan out. Prediction is a hard business. What the actual number is, we did not set a target. If there was a target that should have been set, then
Let me ask again.
For capacity, yeah.
Yeah, what capacity percentage is considered too full? I think because last year,
yes.
We went through this process, and I think it was the number of like 80% is too many kids in a building.
Okay.
Is it 90? Is it like now? We've got kids we're at 94% right now at Highview, and it seems like it's functional. It's not great, but it's functional, right? And so,
which actually is a testament testament to the design of the school, that they were able to accommodate that fairly well, but it has also been a challenge for the staff to be working under those conditions. And so the target capacity, and I'm working off of information that was given to me by Vince, or was it Vance, from Wold Architects, where he would say that 90% would feel full. You feel like you can't put any more students into that building, okay? 80%, yeah, okay, you're getting to that fullness, but 90% is where you're like, where are we gonna put these kids? 95%, you're like, there's no way I can put any more kids, but there is still a little bit of room. 100% is obviously, there is no more room.
Yeah.
Director Carbone.
Can I weigh in on that too? Because there's another element here, and I have several principals here, and they might want to have the courage to come up and speak to this, but I'm going to try to set the condition here. So we've been receiving this year, feedback from some parents about the time it takes and the time a student is allowed to eat lunch. So this is just illustrative of the other second and third order effects that you have to deal with. And when you get in that 90, 95, and while yes, you can fit students in there, but now you have your common area utilizations that become stressed. And one manifestation of that is how many kids can you get through the lunchroom and maintain the academic schedule and try to produce excellence. Not even talking about the stress on the, how many kids you have in a classroom, and some of your specialty classes, and what a stress that is on our teaching staff across a whole building. So when you start talking about full, then there's gradations of full that become competent-driven issues, and we're trying to focus on teaching and learning and academic progress. So the fuller you get, the more stress is on that system without the supports you need to be able to do that at a high level. So it's all these things, and I firmly believe that when you're in that 90% zone, you are stressing that system pretty high, if not maybe overstressed, if you have other ambitions, which we should have. We should have ambitions to give our kids the very best academic experience possible. Very hard to do when you're bumping into your colleagues everywhere, and you got 6-7 minutes to eat eat your lunch, and move on. So, and I'm not trying to be hyperbolic about any of this. It's just trying to feel it. I don't know, Mr. Bakke, if you want to come up and say anything about that. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but you're the principal at Century. Ladies and gentlemen, Jason Bakke, principal, Century Middle School.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity to be here in front of so many familiar faces. It's a good problem to have. I think that we should, number one, just recognize that. We love the fact that people want to be in the Lakeville schools. We're very proud of what we do, and we know that that sometimes presents a few challenges. And to Mr. Bauman's point, especially at the middle level, we know that students are very self-conscious and they want to fit in. And sometimes when you have all of the factors that are happening in the building, if they need to worry about trying to get to class on time because of overcrowding in the hallways, that adds to their stress level. When they are surrounded by so many kids at the locker bay, and I just had to put in an order for 40 more new lockers next year, that adds to the stress levels. Mr. Bauman talked a little bit about the cafeteria and getting through the lines quickly enough to eat. It adds to the stress level. Same with our locker rooms and the capacity there. The hallways were mentioned. Just little things like using the bathroom and getting the drink of water at the bottle filling stations. It's a lot of those things that seem to maybe not be a big deal, but in the eyes of an 11 through a 14-year-old, it is a big deal. And then we think about some of our wheel teachers. With our current schedule, they see every single student in the building. And right now, our wheel teachers at Century Middle School are seeing 958 students. And next year, that's predicted to go up to 988 students. And we know we'll get move-ins throughout the summer. So there's a strong likelihood that CMS will be at 1,000 students next year, and it just adds a lot of stress. And we want to add that we want our students to feel safe and to feel comfortable and to have a great positive learning experience. So we love kids, we want them to come, but there needs to be a balance within that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Bakke. Director Carbone, did you have a question?
Yeah, please. If we found a pot of gold tomorrow when we could build a new school, I understand, Superintendent Bauman, that it'd still be about a 3-year process, something like that.
That's correct.
So the time frame that we have to deal with, we still have to do something like this, even though it may not be the most favorable thing to do to the public. And some folks have mentioned that, I know.
I would like to add that that's potentially, we have some good news on that front.
Right.
It all will depend on the market conditions and lots of other things. But
okay.
As we progress through this, you'll see that we do have a potential solution without having to build at this point, unless, of course, we get lots more students because of good market conditions.
And then, Tracy, you were showing a slide that the process to think through this took about a year, maybe even a little longer than a year. In the model, is there a margin or a cushion so that you've got a little bit of time before you have to repeat this again, should it expand? And it sounds like it will expand in the near future. So is there a margin in the model so that it gives us a little bit of time before we have to react again?
So we looked at capacities and whatnot, and rewinding back to, again, market conditions at the time, we were seeing some early signs of market downturn on real estate, but they weren't being realized at the time. So we were proceeding forth. If you might rewind, remember back to the enrollment presentation where we talked about, we were anticipating 12,200 some students, and we got 12,025. We got, nearly 200 less than we were expecting. So we were entering into that knowing that with that kind of growth, we were going to have to do something, especially at the middle level. And so therefore, we proceeded the best we could with what we had in the time we had, again, balancing all the different priorities that we were trying to fill.
Director Nicholson.
Are we setting ourselves up for a
think of the term setting ourselves up for failure when we're looking at a capacity number, but we don't want to hit the capacity. I mean, I think it's confusing for a lot of people out in the community when I see 700 and it's like we're at 658. We got room. But then everybody's saying now, 90% is where we need to be. So are we, is there a better way to demonstrate that so that we can say, hey, this is really where we want to be? Yeah, if we go overboard, we can absorb some cushion. But when we put that up there, again, I think to a lot of people, and I understand, what was just said about the different common areas and getting to the lunch line and that sort of stuff. But I mean, it does add more question than it does answer when we don't provide the full goal. Is there a better, can we do that in the future? Can we maybe show that?
I think you make a good comment, because what we're showing here is actual building capacity,
right?
Not use capacity,
right?
And
which is different, but
yes,
that's what we want to
correct,
go off
right.
of. We don't want to go off of the building capacity.
Correct.
So, yes. Okay.
Director Thompson.
I appreciate you providing the history of kind of how this came to be and all the people that were involved. As sitting in a kind of board capacity last year going through this, I will be candid, I felt that the process wasn't very as optimal as it could be. When I was presented 2 options, and that was it. The feedback that I was able to provide, in my mind, wasn't really involved. But it's done, it's there, and so when I look at these numbers right now, when I see Cherry View, Christina Huddleston and Eastview at 61% capacity, when they could easily be at 85% capacity, we should have been presented an option where those are, because that area is landlocked. Like anyone who lives in this community would know that they're landlocked and there isn't going to be any further development. And so when I look at Orchard Lake at 77%, that can go to 88%. So my recommendation, as you need to complete the rest of this presentation, but we've got to, while I hate to do this, but we need to put ourselves in a position where we are set to grow, where we can scale for growth and without any impact or minimal impact to other students for 3, 4, 5 years from now. And I get that it might be a big change, but if we make these minor changes now, right, from what I'm seeing, we're going to make minor changes next year and minor changes next year. And so we've got, we can't have kids playing football across the street and they go to different schools. So that doesn't make sense. And so my recommendation, again, and then I'll pause because you've got more of the presentation to go through, is that there are landlocked areas, again, like Orchard Lake, Christina Huddleston. Those guys should be easily at 80 to 85% capacity. And then we know that Highview is going to grow. That should have maybe started at 40 or 50%. Maybe it didn't need to be at full capacity. I'm looking at Lakeview right now, and they're at 84% capacity when we've got Credit River, Elko, New Market. Those guys are growing. So I am discouraged that we went through this and now we have to go through it again. So that's my 2 cents. We got to be more thoughtful around this instead of putting Band-Aids on. So.
Director Baker.
I would say I 100% agree with that, because some of these things were issues that we brought up last year. I have 2 points. First of all, I want to just answer or speak to Director Nicholson's point about the capacity of the buildings and then the percentage. You also have to realize that our special programming, that takes up a classroom, but maybe there's only 12 students in that instead of 24 to 30. And depending on each building and how much special programming it has, that would change the capacity for those rooms, right? And then just also pointing out what the middle school principal said, when we think about a building that's at 90% capacity or close to 90% capacity, how does that impact students and inclusive opportunities? So that makes the lunchroom louder. That makes the hallways more crowded for kids that struggle to get down the hallway anyway. So just it impacts everything within the building. And then when I look at those numbers, I have looking at the 3 middle schools, even if we even it out, we're still kind of getting close to that 87% capacity in each one. We could push some more kids to McGuire and push that up. But then I'm looking at what's the point that we need to start discussing additions to the middle schools like we did for the elementary schools.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So if you see me start twitching, Director Thompson, it's because I'm flashing back, because all those discussions you're going through, the teams went through all those discussions and the back and the forth and the balancing of the priorities.
So then how did we land where we landed? I mean, because I only got two options. We got tons of stakeholder feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Like if we knew Highview was growing, why would we even present an option where Cherry View's half full? And so let's be candid. Like if Teamworks was the one that provided this guidance, I would view that as they did a poor job. They did, because we're having this conversation right now. Okay, and so I voted no last time on this because we're going to be in this scenario, and so I'm done sharing, but I understand your point of view. If we can just be thoughtful so that we set our district in a position where we can scale for growth and make sure that kids can stay connected, neighborhoods are connected. We know that Highview is going to grow. We know that Lakeview and South is going to grow. That would be my thoughts. So,
Absolutely.
Director Cameron.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would say that's all part of that continuous learning process where we need to learn from what we did before and how we can make it better this coming round.
Another question with this, going back to the enrollment presentation, and I'm keenly aware of this because I have a kid in this grade. I think the third grade class is that bubble, right?
Mm-hmm.
How, when they get to middle school, I know it goes back down after third, but what will those percent capacities look like for the third grade class? Or is that coming up?
That's coming up.
Perfect. Okay, great.
So the 658 and the 950, what I'm highlighting here in the enrollment is that we actually did see these numbers. We just saw them, we were seeing them farther out than we thought, or that Teamworks saw, because this is Teamworks projections. And so if you look at these charts, you'll see that the numbers 950 and 658 were in the model. They were predicted. They were predicted for 26-27, not for 24-25. They showed up sooner than we expected. Okay, so that's what you have on the left side is model D3. That's the model that was selected, and then on the right side, model E3, the model that was not selected. In the top, you have Century Middle School, and the bottom, you have Highview as a comparison. You'll note that in the model that was selected, on the high side and even on the low side of the projections, that was 954 for next year, not even 26-27. That was for next year. But again, it showed up 1 year earlier than anticipated. So you'll see that with E3, if we had chosen to prioritize numbers over other priorities, then we might have gone with E3 and we would see different story at Highview, but we would have seen potentially other issues at the other schools, which is all of that balancing that we were talking about. This here is now going into next year. And so we're looking at actual enrollments that we have for next year plus kindergarten projections, because we don't have all of the kindergartens. We have roughly half of our kindergartners enrolled for next year. So for those of you who don't have your kindergartners enrolled yet, please get them enrolled so that we can better plan for these things. With what we're highlighting here is the capacity versus the enrollments that are being predicted on the kindergarten side. You'll see that Highview is at capacity. That's a whole new ballgame for us. We've never gone above 95% in any of our buildings. So again, I want to give a shout out to all those who are struggling at Highview to fit kids in and give them a quality education with these challenges. They're doing an amazing job. Century as well, with the capacity. For a long time, they've been above the 90% or close to or above the 90%, and they've done an amazing job of working through those issues and challenges. Okay.
So part of the refinement process, we pulled a team together to review and address the concerns of overcrowding that we have at Highview and Century Middle School. This team was made up of a cross-section of representatives, including our superintendent. We had administrators, data specialists, members from transportation and finance as well. Together, the team thoroughly analyzed the data to assess the situation and determine the best course of action. The team utilized the guiding change criteria to ensure that our decisions were informed and aligned with our district's goals. There were multiple options that were discussed at our meeting to address the overcrowding concerns that we had for next year and for years to come. So some of those options that we considered was putting on additions to buildings and adding perhaps a mobile or modular classroom. With those two options, it was a time factor and also a funding factor. It would take over a year to complete, and we wouldn't be able to address the issues for now and for next year. We also discussed magnet programming, like a gifted program or STEM or Spanish immersion programming. And what we discussed around that was that we have studied those, and there have been mixed results in other districts in how well those work. And then we also had an issue with transportation, the funding for transportation, because we would want to provide transportation for any of those students who elected into that programming, and that's an expense as well. And so the final option that we considered was the preliminary area change process. We decided that this would be the best way to refine our attendance areas through a school board approved process. It was approved back in 2014. And Douglas is going to talk about this more in detail. But before I turn it over, I do want to say that this team is going to meet on a more regular basis so that we stay ahead of enrollments and any upcoming concerns that we might see. This team hadn't met for a while, and so we're going to make sure that we meet regularly to stay on top of things.
Director Nicholson.
So you mentioned 2014?
2014, we're going to talk about that next.
That's the model that you're using, or the
It's a process that was put in place in 2014. Douglas will expand on that.
You mentioned goals. What were the goals for the team? Like, what did you guys have as like stated goals for dealing with this process?
For the refinement team?
Yeah.
So we followed the guiding change document, and really the goal was to find solutions to our overcrowding at both of those schools, with trying not to move current students from their buildings.
Director Thompson.
Yeah, Director Nicholson, I think this might be a good opportunity for the new board to review those guiding principles of 20 list of criteria. By shortening it might give you guys more flexibility in regards to how you want to design this. I do see that there's 4 bullets of multiple options. What I do see all of them is they're Band-Aids, and it doesn't see a drastic change. And let me rephrase, I don't want to use the word drastic, but a correction of where if you go back to the previous slide, we can't have 3 schools sitting at, maybe the one before that. If you want
Oh, I'm going the wrong way.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
We can't have 3 schools on the far left-hand side at 63% from Cherry Hill, Christina Huddleston and Eastview. Like those, we've got a school building that's at 924 student capacity, and we're only at 67%. And so when you go to the next page, we're saying we're going to make these minor additions and changes. That's not setting our district up to scale for growth. And so what I would like, if the other board members are in agreement, that we've got to fundamentally look at this fairly quickly, because if we're going to make any changes, I'd rather do it now, course correct an error that shouldn't have gotten done last year or shouldn't have been approved last year, so that we can make sure that we can move forward together.
So I would propose that we get through more of the presentation, and then you can bring that up again if you'd like.
I just want,
Director Anderson.
I feel for where you guys are at right now because we're not very far through your presentation, but I also want to just acknowledge that, it was a very tough process last year, and even when, I don't think that TeamWorks really anticipated the public response to the original model, because I remember thinking, I remember being worried about Highview and Lakeview, so it's good that Lakeview didn't anticipate the crunch that we expected, but Century, we saw that coming in terms of how people advocated for their neighborhoods and how things changed over time. So there is I think there was an original proposal that was probably most ideal numbers-wise compared to the other two. And we did listen to community and in terms of advocacy and things like that. So I also want to just give a little credit where credit's due in terms of how the public response was received and responded to. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Next one. Oh, the process, yes. So yes, this preliminary area change process was something that was introduced in 2014, presented to the board and approved by the board. At that time, it was called the New Development Assignment Process. We've since adjusted that to preliminary area change. It was utilized, again, repeating ourselves, over a decade to manage that 1,000 students of growth over the 10 years with additions and with those adjustments. The downside of that is we ended up with the patchwork quilt of a map that we ended up with, but we were able to do all that without moving students who were enrolled in the schools. Minimizing that disruption. So the process is evaluating the predicted enrollment versus building capacities, getting together with the team, reviewing the data, recommending and refining changes, forwarding that recommendation to the superintendent. In this particular process, Superintendent Baumann was at every meeting, so he knew all along what the different recommendations would be and what the final recommendation would be. And then those changes would be brought before the school board, as we are here tonight doing. Once that's made public, we then publish those changes out to the website and the maps and everything else.
So before we show you the maps, we want to take a moment to take you through the guidelines that the refinement team has recommended for students. Everybody wants to know how what's going to happen with their child, and so we want to make sure we take you through that first. And as I said, one of the top priorities was making sure that we didn't move any current students. Just a note, these changes will apply to any student who begins a new school after September 2nd, 2025. So that's the beginning of our new school year. First, students who are currently enrolled at Highview Elementary and Century Middle School will continue to attend these schools. And transportation will be provided as eligible, as we have thus far. Incoming kindergarten students into HVE, if they are in the current HVE attendance area, they can still attend HVE unless they choose to attend the new attendance area school. Again, transportation will be provided if they're eligible, if they attend either school. Sixth grade students, any incoming sixth grade students into Century Middle School, if they're in the attendance area or the current attendance area, they may still attend Century Middle School. And what's coming next? Transportation will be provided if they're eligible. Students who are new to the district. So if a student enrolls in the district after the start of the 25-26 school year, so starting September 2nd of 2025, they will attend the new attendance area schools, and transportation will be provided if they're eligible. This last one was one that, I'll be honest, our team really struggled with. And this is around siblings of current Highview or Century Middle School students who are not currently enrolled at Highview or Century Middle School will attend the new attendance area schools. Remember, this is in effect next year. So siblings will attend the new attendance area schools. Just as a note, students who reside in the attendance areas that are impacted by the adjustment are welcome to transfer to the newly assigned school if they want to, and eligible students will receive transportation. And so if you're thinking, why would somebody want to do that? Let me give you an example of a new kindergartner who's going to be planning to start at Highview. If I'm a parent of that kindergartner and I also have a 4-year-old at home, I might want to think about transferring to the new boundary school since siblings will not be grandfathered in. And so I don't want to have one student at Highview and another at Eastview or Cherryview. So it might make sense to me to start my incoming kindergartner at the new school.
Yeah, Director Anderson.
I guess I'm wondering about the kindergarten and sixth grade. Is that because you feel we've already committed if they've enrolled?
Correct. Yep. Our goal was not to move any students who are already enrolled.
And we've enrolled most of those students already for course registrations and for kindergarten enrollment.
So what will the relief be from both Century and Highview under this proposed adjustment?
That's coming up.
Director Nicholson.
What's the eligibility for transportation in these situations?
So eligibility
Co-ed, or is
refers to whether you're within 0.8 miles of the elementary school, not in a safety zone, you have the option to pay or to self-transport. And then likewise at the middle and high school, it's 2 miles.
Yep.
Again, safety zones notwithstanding.
So it's going to be the normal busing situation?
Yes.
So we may be having 2 buses?
Correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
Hey, and last year, I believe, I'm sorry.
Director Thompson.
Yeah, last year, I believe it was it was 1 mile, and then we extended it to 2 miles. Is that my understanding?
No.
During the budget. Oh, that was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we.
Director Anderson.
Do we know anything about the difference in numbers? Like, I might have to get this from you behind the scenes, but kindergarten and 6th grade versus siblings. Like, I really don't like the idea of siblings going to different schools. I understand new enrollment is happening, but I also feel like they're not yet at that new school. Do you know the comparison of those numbers? I know you've been probably.
We did some comparison of those numbers. We don't have those in the presentation available for tonight. If that's something that you want to see after this presentation, we can put that together.
Okay, next, open enrolled students. If you'll remember from a former presentation, our open enrolled students are students who don't reside in our district and who have elected to come to our schools. Highview and Century Middle School will not accept any new open enrolled students. And then beginning in 26-27, current open enrolled students entering 6th grade will follow the new school path, and I'll show you that in just a second. Intra-district transfer students are students who reside in our district but are choosing to go to a school that's outside of their attendance area. Beginning in 26-27, intra-district transfer students entering 6th grade will also follow the new school path, or they can also attend their designated resident school, so they can go back to their school. And as a note, intra-district transfer will remain open for the 25-26 school year. The school path here, you will see our elementary schools, CHE, Eastview, Oak Hills, and Orchard Lake. Their school path, this is only if you're open enrolled or intra-district transfer. This is not for our resident students. If you are in one of those schools, you will go on the school path to Kenwood Trail Middle School and then to Lakeville South. And if you are in Cherryview, Highview, JFK, Lake Marion, or Lakeview, you will go to McGuire Middle School and then on to South. And you see that we don't have any elementary schools feeding into Century Middle School, and then Century will feed into North.
Director Nicholson.
So in terms of open enrolled students, how many do we have that are currently sitting in, what would it be, 543 of elementary schools that are planning to end up in Century Middle School as an open enrolled student?
With this proposal, there would be none.
No, you're talking about new, so like, how many, let me ask you this, sorry, wrong way to say that. Century Middle School, how many open enrolled students do we currently have that are 7th and 6th graders?
That are already enrolled in?
That are already enrolled in the school.
They will continue to.
I know they will, but what's the number?
What the number of students is?
Again, that's not information that we prepared. We can get that number if you need it.
Okay, I would be curious because we keep talking about moving Lakeville residents. And to my knowledge, people who were on the board last year, did any of the open enrolled kids, were they shifted? From my understanding, they were always aligned and then they got to go right where they wanted to, and we decided to, well, that's why I'm asking the question. So did they move? How did that work?
So if they were already enrolled as open enrolled or intra-district, we treated them both the same, then they got to stay in the school that they were in. And that was a decision that was discussed at length through the process, and that was the final determination that we made, is that we would leave those where they were.
Can I just clarify one thing on this slide? So students that are going into Century next year that might be currently open enrolled, are they going to be allowed to go to Century?
For this current year going in,
So, yeah, the 2025, 2026.
there were, I believe, 1 or 2 students that were allowed to go into Century Middle School. Again, that was something that was discussed through our process and determined that that was okay.
Director Cameron?
A question here, and this is maybe a broader conversation around, like, do we see open enrollment as like a competitive or financial benefit to our district? I mean, I think overall we do. I think one of my questions here is for some of these elementaries, like I believe like Highview and Oak Hills, their K-12 school is north, and so do we see any repercussions in people being interested in doing open enrollment if they don't get to stay with their elementary kind of cohort, that they're going to be really mixed up every time? I'm just curious. We don't really know, but.
Right. Any decision we make could trigger that, where people decide, I want to check out this other school district. That's their right. We're not out to try to stop them. We encourage them to stay and to work with us through our challenges and to make things work for the best.
I think it would help to know how many open enrolled students we're dealing with in these different schools, because that would help make our decisions or rationale behind a lot of these questions. So, yeah, if you guys can provide that information, that would be great.
Okay.
Good question.
Director Anderson?
Why are there no students going to North with this except for Century? Because I know the numbers at North and South are, I mean, not exactly equivalent. I know that Kim Booty likes to say how many more students she has, but why none going to North?
One of the marvels of the original boundary that we developed when South opened back in 2005-06 was that we've been within plus or minus 100 of the 2 different schools, and South has been on the positive side almost all those years until this year. We anticipated much earlier than that flip would happen. We were surprised it took this long because North encompasses most of the growth area, with the exception of the Elko New Market growth areas, the Credit River growth areas. Most of the growth areas in Lakeville are in the North area. So we anticipate that eventually, not only is it now shifted on the positive side, it's going to continue to increase. That's why we decided to just keep the Century flowing into the north, but not the other 2. Okay, numbers, charts. So this is the point at which I dearly miss Jason Molesky, who was our technology director many years ago, and then Andrew Barron, who was our data analysis director prior to Tracy joining us. And this was their wheelhouse. This was something they lived and breathed and loved. I am working off of the models that they built and doing my best to refine and adjust and improve. And so on the left-hand side, well, bottom line up front, bluff, if you've ever heard of that. Superintendent Bauman loves that concept, bluff. Okay, if you want bluff, you look to the lower right corner. That's the bottom line up front. Okay, bottom right corner, new development, recommend changes, not grandfathering siblings. That's the bottom line. That's where we're going with these discussions. Okay, I put the rest of that up there not to overwhelm, but to show that there was a lot of data analysis put into this. We broke down the new housing counts by type, single family, apartment, townhomes, attached townhomes, detached townhomes, so on and so forth. We analyzed how many students that we get on average from those different types, and also from the different areas. For example, I want to get this right. Chokecherry Hill, I believe, if I can remember right, we averaged about 0.7 students out of the Chokecherry Hill, which is very near the Summerlin neighborhoods, where we got 1.24 students. We got more than 1 student out of that. So there are different dynamic factors, housing size, price point, lots of different factors to go in there. And we continue to try to incorporate more and more of that data into our analysis as we come up with these charts. The chart on the left shows development as it would be if everything was built up, all the families were moved in, and all of the children showed up at our school within a year or two. That's what those numbers would be. We know that's not going to happen. We know that the houses take time to be built, takes time to get sold, takes time for the families to move in, and for the students to finally show up and attend our schools. So that's where the chart on the right comes in. That's where we broke it down by 5 years. You can see on the chart on the left, the 120% concern for Highview and the 94% concern for Lake Marion. You'll see that over the 5 years, that is less of a concern when we analyze it differently, that is not as much of a concern, that it never actually reaches 90%. So we're not recommending any changes for Lake Marion at this point. The next chart down on the left-hand side shows then if we make these proposed changes for not counting siblings or anything else, what would that look like? And you can see that even there, we're still at around 100% capacity concern with Highview. So moving on to the right, we've got showing the iterations from, this is cohort only, not considering any new developments, new students showing up. The next one shows adding in the new developments without any changes. The next one shows, okay, let's make the changes, but let's grandfather the students in. And you can see lots of red still there, still over 100%. And then not grandfathering the students, how that gradually over time will get us down to a more reasonable level at Highview. And that's why we're making the recommended changes at this point. All right, these are the,
Director Thompson.
Can you go back to that previous slide? Yep. So if all of the development was done and children moved in, no kids are moving into Cherry View or Christina Huddleston. All right. And the only two that's being impacted with all the development that's being done is Eastview and Highview. And that's it.
Highview and Lake Marion, yes.
Or Highview and Lake Marion. Well, Lake Marion's at 94%, right? From the one above and below, it's the same.
It's the same because we didn't recommend any changes.
Got it.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So we're going to leave 5 to 10 schools at bare capacity. Well, let me rephrase that. Not bare capacity, but the recommendation is leaving those at 63, 76, 77% capacity to fix Highview and let that continue to run at 101%.
Okay. That is one way to look at it.
Okay.
The other way to look at it is, again, prioritizing the minimizing of the disruptions. To look at a larger map and incorporate changes across the board would be a process of more what we went through last year.
Are you looking at this as a long-term fix, or how many years would you think this would hold us off before we need to make major adjustments?
Great question. Again, we're working off of predictions, what we think will be. Housing market conditions will drive how close or how far off we're going to be with this. This, with the information that we currently have, is our best estimate while minimizing those disruptions.
So we do look at the permitting, work with Justin Miller and Tom Terry, who's down in Elko New Market, and we gauge that. I met with them last month on this very matter, because the one thing I don't want to have is permitting explode and we don't know about it. So that's right now, both of them are telling me they're pretty much steady state around the 300 mark in Lakeville. They don't see that growing exponentially or rapidly, but that's how we would stay plugged into that with regard to knowing what the housing is. And then, of course, you need to know the type. So there's those factors as well.
Okay. So onto the maps, and while we're on the maps, I do want to shout out to ESRI, or ESRI as it's sometimes referred to. They are a large GIS system provider to many corporations and other organizations. They provide their products to us at no charge as a K-12 instructional institution. So we are able to minimize our cost on being able to generate these maps. I also want to give a shout out to former technology coordinator Greg Utek, who train me in on how to use this system. And I appreciate the time he invested in me on that. All right, so what we have here is the current map, and then if we pull in on the right side there, the changes that are being posed. We have East View extending over on the north and the west and onto the east side of Highview itself a little bit, and then Cherry View pulling it down a little bit into the south from where it currently stands, up in the, what do I want to say, the Dodd Highview kind of corner, and then down below extending into any potential development areas. As has been pointed out, it's a larger building. It has much more capacity to handle any potential future growth that might come in there. And the odds are that's where the growth is going to come. So for the middle, it's the charts again. I say they're the tip of the iceberg. There are many more different charts. I did not want to neither overwhelm nor bore you to death with all the different charts. So I just wanted to, again, show you some of the process we went through. The bluff, the bottom line up front, lower right corner, where we do see over the 5 years, we have a reasonable chance using this process to actually level out the buildings much better and actually flip McGuire and Century for the first time in a very long time, where Century is in the green, where they're less than 90%. Again, all dependent on housing market conditions and growth.
Director Thompson.
So are you forecasting that there is based on your projections, there is not a need for a fourth middle school?
Unless the market heats up so much that we're seeing lots and lots of houses going up again, that is what I am seeing, yes.
Can I ask a question about that? What is the timeline with how the permits go and the houses get built versus the time that we need to build a school?
Oh, build a school.
Like, let's say really the market did cook up and.
I can answer on the side of, from the permitting to the family moving in and entering our schools is roughly a 4-year process. Some are a little bit quicker, some are a little bit longer, but roughly 3 to 4 years. Bill, did you want to talk about?
36 months to 48. Middle school is going to be maybe a little longer than a elementary school, and we know that. But the more important thing is to see it coming. And do you have your sensors out that are picking up and knowing that, along with these timelines? And I feel very strongly we have that in place. And forecasting out to 2030 to try to look at this, and again, trying everything we can on God's green earth to be sensitive to our families, but also steady state for our kids to the extent that we can, with a growth challenge in front of us and trying to hit that balance exactly right. Sure, we could do radical shift. I've been in the community for 20 years. I don't think our community absorbs that very well. And I just trying to be uber sensitive to that. Maybe I'm too sensitive because I do live in the community, but I also think our kids need to have that stability to the extent that we can offer it. I can tell you, I grew up in a military family. I went to 4 elementary schools in 3 countries. And I got ruined. No, I'm kidding. I'm just saying it's a tough thing, and that's not who we are in Lakeville. Lakeville, we try to be as steady as we can. It also, I think, is better for learning. I don't think too many people will find research that tells you differently. And I think everybody here is very compassionate about that. This is a very ugly problem to have. So if we're going to do a radical change and absorb that, we really have to, you have to hit the mark or you're tarred and feathered out of town. And I'm trying to not get tarred and feathered out of town. So just because I want as steady state as we can get for our kids. And that's why we're looking at it 5 years out. That's why we're trying to figure out the housing and stay tuned into that. And, the biggest issue I've heard, and I really want to go back and look at this very closely, was the issue of, on this side of the street, one thing is happening, on the other side, another thing is happening. We were trying to be real careful about not moving as few kids as possible, but that's another scenario. Here's another thing I know. This is one city, two kiddies, and the two kiddies, they argue a lot. And, at the Pee-wee level, they're going through sports and they're going through activities and stuff, and they're doing that in the community, and it's setting a culture that, I go to this school and then I go to this school and then I become a Cougar and we're gonna beat North at state or whatever. I get that, and we all should get that. So we don't want to do that kind of thing, but at the end of the day, do we want to pay more taxes to build more buildings and we have empty space? We can't do that either. Okay, I just want to say that.
Okay.
Director Cameron.
I appreciate those comments, Superintendent Bauman. Looking at this, I think this addresses maybe my earlier question about the third grade bubble, part of it. So maybe this is a question to you, Michael. When we see numbers like close to 98% at Century for a couple of years, or even over 95, almost 96 at Kenwood, I'm assuming that means higher class size. Because at the end of the day, you can only fit so many kids in a room, and so you got to pack them all into the same size room. Is that a fair way to kind of look at these high numbers, to say if we can distribute this better, classes might be more even across the district?
Distribution would necessarily relieve that particular problem. But, I always like to say it's not things that we're distributing, because that's an easy math problem, right? These are people, and that's where the complexity comes in. So everything you're saying is right. How do we navigate through that and minimize disruption? Because there's a whole social element to this too. I know you know that.
And if you zero in on the bluff, the bottom right, you'll see in 2006 they enter 6th grade. And then you track them down through 7th and through 8th grade. They are included in that.
Okay. Can I follow up on that really quick?
Yeah.
Thank you. I think, so I was on the area attendance input team, the 50-person team, whatever that one was called. And so I feel like I've looked at a lot of this for quite a while now. And I think, I don't want to kind of go off into like philosophy, but what I'm hearing too, and I appreciate what Michael said earlier, is that like at the end of the day, we have to figure out some movement in the district, and that is hard, but that's inevitable, and it will continue to be inevitable with a growing district. I mean, that's a blessing and a curse, right? I think something that our community should also remember is that current students, even before any attendance, during the 10-year period that you mentioned, we have many elementaries where kids are splitting middle schools. We have many, and then Kenwood splits high school. So there are some schools where like a child will follow with all their peers through the 3 levels, but for many of our students, that's not the current reality as it exists today. And then also, I think because of how our schools were built, and there's, I'm sure, great reason at the time, they are very geographically close, as you mentioned, Tracy. And so I think, to use my family as example, the middle school that we will go to, currently assigned, is not the closest middle school. And so proximity to school, I think, is a goal, but it's not necessarily how school assignments can ultimately be designed for every family. And that's something I think to know. And that's how many families currently exist in our current model. Their closest school physically is not the one that they're assigned to.
Just to piggyback off of Director Anderson's question, we talked about the timeline for building new buildings, but is the timeline similar for building additions?
Look at Bill.
Yes, building an addition, though it's smaller, it still takes about the same amount of time to the village. Same with when trying to get money put together to do it. You still have the bond issue, you have all the specs put together to put that building together. So yes, it's about the same.
All right. Okay, so on to the middle area adjustment maps. We have the current again on the right, and then coming up on the left, I'm sorry, left, now right, are the recommended adjustments. You'll see that there is a large expansion for the McGuire Middle School area. Again, no changes recommended or proposed or being enacted for high school. This is just for the middle school. And then a very smaller portion for Kenwood Trail. And that would lead us back to the numbers that you saw in the bottom right of the previous with the charts.
Just, is the purple, is that Kenwood or is that McGuire?
Okay, the purple is the salmon extending up into through the Century and up into the maps that we'll be putting out will be much clearer than that.
So the purple is McGuire.
Yes.
Oh, that's not our district.
That's not our district.
That's Farmington.
Yep, that's outside. That's our legislative mandated boundary that bumps in and out, yes.
Yeah. Director Thompson.
So if you were at Century Middle School and then you're going to McGuire, you are still going to the same high school?
Yes.
Correct? All right, so no one's changing high schools?
Right. Correct.
So you can still vote, you can still be your Cougar/Panther?
Yes.
All right, so we're good there.
Okay.
So we're just impacting,
Except for open or inter-district enrollment.
except for inter-district.
Okay.
Got it.
Following that path.
Yep.
Again, emphasizing that intra-district will continue to be an option as far as we know going into next year and the following year.
So it's just impacting elementary, middle school, and again, hey, I get it, and kids are resilient, and you got to give them a little bit of benefit of the doubt. I mean, they're getting new teachers every year, new classmates every year. In my mind, they probably don't. I'm sure they care which school they go to. Parents probably care more so than the students. As long as the students are going to school with their friends in their neighborhood, that's what counts. And so I'm looking at this, right, guys, and it's like, and I appreciate this option to look at, but I would love to see another option, and I'm not sure when we have that conversation with the board, but I'll wait until you guys finish your presentation.
Can I just ask about the, oh, sorry.
Yeah, Director Anderson.
Can I ask about the preliminary area for McGuire? That was,
Sure.
That area would go to McGuire, but then that's north, isn't it?
That is the Lakeville North area, yes, north of County 50. Mm-hmm. Yes.
So it would kind of become, McGuire would be similar to Kenwood, where we're splitting.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So one of the things that I do want to highlight with the map is we tried not to do the patchwork quilt that we did previously. We tried to preserve more continuous lines in this proposal than we had in the past. Again, continuously improving, trying to learn from the past.
Director Nicholson.
Do you have any sort of the numbers in terms of like how many people go to, say, and I know Eastview was kind of in the mix last time, but it was like, Eastview and then would go to Kenwood and then would go back to North. Like, how many of those scenarios, I mean, are there still a handful of those? I mean, how many kids are actually impacted by that where they end up going to, kind of the feeder school that would maybe go south, and they've been with a elementary school that was, kind of lined up going to north. Their middle school ends up going to, 80% of them end up going to south, but they're in that one little pocket that then shoots back over to north.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that was a big one for like my neighborhood. Like a lot of people were like, wait a minute, you're going to bus us around and then we're back to north, and like it was.
This is my family, right? This is my family in terms of the pocket.
Yeah.
It's, I think, less, and Principal Aiken is here too, but we're in the less than 10%, I believe, of ECU that goes to Kenwood and then goes to North. So that was a transition with the boundary changes last year.
So how much of that happens? Because I'd love to know those numbers, and I know you probably don't have them off the top of your head here, but like I'm curious to know how much we do that, because
Okay.
I mean that it's just juggling, and I'm curious if some of those pockets could be carved out back one way, move a different pocket back the other way to balance it out.
Yep.
I'm just curious to.
And we did have those numbers for the previous process. For this process, we haven't crunched those numbers, but we can certainly put those together and get them.
Appreciate it.
Director Cameron.
I tried to pull up the guiding framework document that you referenced from the last iteration, and I couldn't find it quickly. But if I'm remembering correctly, I feel like one of the items was to try to create pathways as much as possible. Realizing that currently Kenwood splits, and there's many elementaries that split. Ours is also one. So I don't know, I mean, maybe to Brett's point here, is there a way, and I'm cognizant of demographics and busing and everything, but is there a way to create, I think splitting 2 middle schools into 2 high schools seems, I don't know if like splitting more kids is like the best model, even though I realize that 1/3 of our kids are split no matter what happens in the current model. It seems like if you're going to do that to 2 all middle schools, then it should split into both high schools. Like, let's make it an equitable experience in terms of social, emotional for our kids and with friends. And I'm not proposing that necessarily, but it does seem like we're preferencing one middle over the other 2 in terms of social structures.
Sure. So again, that would be a more comprehensive process that would then be putting everything back on the table and reevaluating, and would be more of a process like what we did last year than what we're recommending this time. Yes.
Director Thompson.
Hey, Director Baker, can you remind me, I think this last year we were informed that previously it was the school board that did boundary changes, not a third-party entity who didn't know our district. And so last year was the first time we did this, correct? Yep.
First time that we used a consultant?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Last year
Okay.
was the first time that we had done
But previously, it was the school board's discretion or authority to do these changes. And, with input from the administration and city council and various folks that were part of the process.
Yes and no. The process wasn't really significantly different in the sense that we did have 1 or 2 board members involved in the design team process. It wasn't called that at the time, but it was a very similar process. And then feedback was garnered and very similar to what we did last year. So yes, there were representative board members involved at that level at that time, but it wasn't where one model was brought before the board and then up or down and then brought back, up or down, brought back. It was where we reached the point where this is the model we think best meets the needs, and then it was presented to the full board.
For clarity, board members were not involved in that kind of model last year, in this last transaction.
They were
presented, yeah.
My recollection is the board members that were able to did attend the input sessions, but no, they were not part of the design team aspect of it.
Two additional questions, and I just want to make sure did we save any money with transportation, with the new changes? And then lastly, back to you, how many kids is this going to impact overall in this proposal?
And just to clarify, we attended the input sessions, but we were not involved in the conversation. We were observing only. So I would say involvement is very loosely used there.
Zero process, or zero.
Yes. Yes, so there was some savings in busing because we weren't, driving by a couple different buildings with kids from a different part of the, district. So yes, I believe there were 2 buses that we saved after we drew the new lines.
Yes, and how would you quantify that? Like, are we looking at $50,000 in savings, $500,000 in savings?
One bus costs us $80,000 a year.
Okay, so 160. And then, ballpark, how many kids are going to be impacted in elementary, middle school with the recommendation?
Okay, so we did calculate that there would be 74 siblings that are not currently enrolled in Highview that would be future impacted, and 154 siblings, elementary or younger siblings of Century, that would be future impacted for a total of 228 siblings. Again, no current students enrolled would be moved. unless they wanted to.
That's it. We don't have anything more.
Dare we
you have
ask
other
more, any other questions?
Thank you for sticking with us through that. I really appreciate it.
I assume we'll have more discussion on this at a later time, but once we gather some more information.
That's a great assumption and accurate. And to Director Thompson's question, or not question, statement, love an opportunity to talk to the board about direct interaction with this in order to get at the right solution. I will turn every stone, listen to every comment, accept every criticism to get to the right place. I just want to say that out loud.
Director Thompson.
So what was the drop dead date where this has to be decided this year? Was it end of June, or is there a request by like May or end of April?
Well, we would need I'll assess a date that's backwards planned based on communicating to our community. You obviously don't want to go into the school year without that being notified and that enrollment processes can articulate. So I will look at that and get you a precise answer.
All right, we'll move on. It's not on the director's agenda, but it is up on the board. We're going to move on to the first readings of Policy 606, or revisions there too, and 613. Ms. Alberg.
Good evening, Chair Swanson, Superintendent Bauman, and members of the school board. You have before you this evening a first reading of Policy 606, which is textbooks, instructional materials, and Policy 613, which is graduation requirements. Changes throughout the policies are minor and have been reviewed by the policy committee. This is a first reading and no action is necessary.
Any questions or comments? I had a question, more just recalling for the committee. On page 606-1, did we want to keep meet or exceed required standards under section 3B2? Director Cameron?
I believe at our meeting, we discussed leaving it, that was fine.
Leaving it cut out or leaving it in?
Leave it as is. Is that how it reads?
That's what I have in my notes as well.
We agreed to like retain it,
Yes,
right? Yes.
yes.
Okay, is that a better way to say it? Yeah.
Yes. So we just have to change that in the red line.
Is it red line?
It is red line mine. Unless there's a clean version.
Hey, Matt.
Director Thompson.
And so I am not as prepared on this particular one, so I apologize. The curriculum, the textbooks and instructional materials, Policy 606, the state of Minnesota has given the authority for the Board of Education or the school board to make the final call on all curriculum and so forth. And while I am not a curriculum expert, we have an advisory council called the Teaching and Learning Council, or a group that reviews these and stuff of that nature. I'd love to be able to get further awareness of curriculum that is being tested, how the results are being done before it actually comes to the table saying, hey, we want to recommend this program. And so I'm using myself as an example because when we approved the Bridges curriculum, 4th and 5th grade last year, there was minimal discussion around what is it, how effective is it, how is it compared to like, I don't know, I'm just making it up. Is it Singapore math or some other math? And I'm not saying Bridges is a bad math program because I just don't know, but I'd love to, as a board, and maybe I'll take some additional time to review this again and come back next week, but I would like the board to be able to have a further awareness of, we're going to kick this off, here's what we're looking at, so incremental checkpoints, so that we're not waiting to the very end to say, hey, here's what we're choosing, and then we have to approve it. So,
Director Carbone.
Yeah, and to your point, Director Thompson, one of the things we were talking about a meeting or two ago were data analytics, metrics, to try and understand if there really was outcome improvement on curriculums and so forth. And, I think we need to have that conversation further to understand what it is in the curriculum that's successful or not successful, so that we can determine what's the best approach to what we're spending millions and millions of dollars on.
I will say one thing. I believe a couple of our board members will be sitting on the Teaching and Learning Committee as well, so that might provide a little insight. And then hopefully, whenever a proposal is made to the board, we could also dig in at that time. But Director Cameron?
I think this is a great conversation. I don't feel like it's the policy, though, that needs to get updated regarding this conversation. So I'm thinking like we bring Teaching and Learning back to continue this dialogue, but I don't think the policy would change as a result of what we're discussing. Correct?
Well, I believe Director
No,
Thompson
I think
was
you're right. I
proposing
mean,
something.
I'm skimming through it right now because, but it does say that the superintendent shall be responsible for keeping the school board informed of progress on the part of the staff and others involved in the textbooks and other instructional materials. And I think with Superintendent Bowman here, I envision that would be satisfactory to the school board based on compared to previous years.
Yeah, and if I may just say to Director Thompson, to your point, so that requirement has already been levied to me. And I think in our board coordination meetings, we have slated that on our agendas, our upcoming agendas. So Roger, tracking.
Got it. Thank you, sir.
And I just want to point out, we've had pretty massive overhaul of curriculum for both math and, well, with math, given how outdated things were, but also with the redact. So it's something that I think we have to let kind of play out and see how it impacts our test scores and grades and things like that, right? Yeah.
Director Carbone.
Yeah, and Director Anderson, back to the comment you just made. What's the time frame been since we made curriculum changes and looking at outcomes? Is it 6 months, a year, 2 months?
I don't have that for you. That is not under my purview, but I can find out and bring that back for you.
It's tricky because we have them flipped too, so like the K through 3 or whatever is working on, I forget if it's redact or K through 2 and 3 through 5 are working on math. So then next year it will flip where they switch curriculum. And so I think this is going to be a time thing where not everybody's having all the same, or not all the grades are having all the same curriculum changes this year. So it's just going to take some time.
Any questions on the other policy? 613? No? All right. We'll stop asking you teaching and learning questions and move on.
Thank you.
Any board reports? Director Cameron?
Thank you. I have a bunch of things that I've been able to do in the last couple of weeks, and it's been really great. My family and I attended the Lakeville Science Show, which was just really awesome to see the AP science students doing chemistry on stage. And my kids already want to try to create elephant toothpaste at home. So we went to the dollar store and bought a bunch of ingredients. And so just really great for kids to learn how to do like science translation. I work at the university. That's a big thing that we talk about. So that's great. I also attended the speech tournament with Brett and Carly. We divvied up and went to different events. I went to the storytelling. And it's just amazing how these kids can get up and present these stories. They have 30 minutes to write a story from scratch and present it. And so I went to the finals and saw one Lakeville North student compete in the finals for that event. And then that same weekend went to the GARD competition show that was held at Lakeville North. Never been to a competition like that before. That was great. I think what really showed is that Lakeville has, I think it's the largest, someone can correct me, thank you, the largest GARD program in the state. And so it was really great to see at the end there was an exhibition of the elementary, middle, and high school teams. And it was, I grew up in dance, and so I could at least appreciate the performances in terms of technicality. And it was just clear how much more advanced our programs here are in Lakeville. So that was really great to be there for. And then the other thing, I was able to last week attend the Community Education Advisory Council. And at that meeting, we had a presentation by the River Valley Project Explorer, which is part of our community ed, but also we're a member of a 5-district consortium that offers adults with disabilities programming, age 18 and older. It's a very robust program that's been operating since 1991. And I think the main things coming out of this was that since 1991, the program only received about $13,000 in state funding, and then local levies supplemented some of the programming. But last year, with the legislature approved a per capita funding model, and so having many, many people participate in this program as part of our consortium, the Project Explorer was very excited that they'll be getting much more funding to offer better programming for residents in our community. And that as a result of that, local levy won't be needed any longer to support the program. So that was a great presentation, and we have many people living in the 194 boundaries who participate in that program. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Director Carbone?
Yes, I recently attended a tent maker's breakfast, and Superintendent Bauman was the keynote speaker. And despite him saying he was ruined as a child, I have to I have to say he did a very nice job, and we got a lot of good community goodwill out of it.
Director Baker?
So we had our 917 meeting for this month, and one of the highlights of the board meeting was having the 4 of the teachers that they had for international hiring this year come and present to the board and just tell us about their experience of coming from another country into our country to teach. It's been something that 917 has been presenting statewide to several other districts about how they have developed this program, and they're bringing in international hires. It was amazing because they were able to bring in their families as well. The support that the district has offered to them to be able to bring them here. And I think it's something that when we think about the shortage of teachers in special education, this is an area in which we can also increase diversity within our districts, but also, fill high needs positions. I have to give credit to former board member Director Anderson, David Anderson, because he was part of the program of bringing these teachers in and helped support it. So it was kind of cool to see the fruition of that original plan and bringing these teachers in. And I do know that Superintendent Bauman has been talking to the superintendent in 917 too about that. So thanks for looking out for that and trying to find creative ways to hire and also to fulfill our needs in our district and make sure that our students of different ethnicities and cultures also have teachers that look like them. So I thought that was just kind of a cool bonus with it. So it was a really neat meeting.
Director Anderson.
I'll just jump in and say I went to the Arenas board meeting, and that's a collaboration with us and the city. And so it was nice to see our city administrator, Justin Miller, and one of our council people, Michelle Volk, and then some representation from the Arenas, and they are doing very well. And one of the exciting things, they hosted, I believe it was their first Pee Wee regional tournament. Unfortunately, Lakeville South and North did not make it, so that's unfortunate, but good thing for our city to be bringing teams in and holding those kinds of events, so they seem to be doing well.
Director Thompson.
I did not go anywhere, but my son was in DECA and made it to state, and a big shout out to Lakeville South, Mr. Selwan, for doing a fantastic job at for the DECA program down there.
I do not have a board report, but I do have a promotion for the upcoming Home and Landscape Community Expo that is going to be at Lakeville North this weekend. The school board will have a booth there, so if you want to come say hi, we'll be there. But maybe more interesting will be the Young Entrepreneurs section, which will be comprised of students from our schools. They'll be in the auxiliary gym, so stop by, buy some of the stuff that they've made, and support the students. Superintendent's report.
Just a brief one. So I think if everybody was tracking the weather, Lakeville's out of the blizzard zone. So I consider that great news, just because I wasn't going to go to bed tonight at all. And I still might not go to bed tonight at all, because we're not done yet. Obviously, if I wake up tomorrow and I can't push the door to get my dog out or Gary Amoroso's dogs out, I don't know if people know about that joke, but anyway, then of course I'll have to deal with calling school and dealing with that because obviously the snow would be over 9 inches. So hopefully that's not going to happen, and I just wanted to let everybody know, we were trying to deal with that a little bit, and I'm very grateful that whatever it is, jet stream, AI, I don't know what, but it moves further south, and I know we do have some staff coming in from the south, so we'll have to give them some quarter tomorrow. So just wanted to share that, and let's move along.
All right. Next up, recommended action, medical and dental renewal. Brenda Elbrick and Aaron Casper.
Yes, you have before you this evening the recommended renewal for our medical and dental plans for the 25-26 plan year. The insurance committee met throughout the 24-25 school year with representatives from National Insurance Services to review the self-funded medical insurance plan for performance. The administration recommends a rate increase of 5% for the 25-26 plan year. It should be noted that given the cost-sharing formula that is standard in the district collective bargaining agreements and employment agreements, the district's share of the increase will be 2.5%, and the employee's share will be 2.5%. And Aaron Casper from NIS will present an overview of the plan performance and updates. I'll turn that over to you.
All right, thank you very much, Brenda. Chair Swanson, Superintendent Baumann, members of the board, thanks for having me this evening. I will just preface this before I go into the kind of our market update and our specifics regarding Lakeville. I wish every one of my clients was like this, so just want to preface that. I'm just going to jump in, and then I'll certainly take questions as I'm going. Really just to give an overview of the market. Obviously, the medical insurance represents the second largest budget bucket here at the district outside of salaries. So it's important that we have a viable, sustainable program for attraction and retention. And I would argue that we've certainly done that in the 4 years that we've been self-insured. We've actually met some targets, and I'll share those here in a second, that early, so that's good. In the market overall, there has been still a reset in the fully insured and the pooled environment. There's still a lot of volatility in the marketplace, and that primarily has to do with the fact that claims have been going up pretty much across the board. So we're seeing that. We're seeing continued utilization in the mental health category. We're seeing a transition gradually into the virtual environment where it's more efficient for individuals to go ahead and have access to that care, at least maybe even as a stopgap to being able to get in front of a physical practitioner. And that's certainly a cost savings mechanism for entities as well. And then finally, in the market update, the specialty drug class category is continuing to grow at quite a bit of a heavy trend. So I'd say I'm talking about like the GLP-1s that you've seen advertised, the Wegovy's, the Zepbounds, the Ozempics, those types of things. And we're no different here at Lakeville Area Schools. Some positive notes here. Our Healthiest You program, which is our version of the virtual access for our employees and their dependents, has done extremely well. We're going to be finishing up on 3 years of providing this service to our employees. And so far, through the 30 months, so we're not quite ended through June of 25, we've saved real dollars in terms of cost taking away from our self-insured medical plan, along with fees that we've been able to negotiate with our TPA, Blue Cross Blue Shield, a little under $1.6 million. So that is definitely a shining star for Lakeville area schools. Additionally, we have a program that is that we deployed a little over 2 years ago now when it comes to the end of June through Solarte Health. It's called an Amplify Network, basically where individual employees can have no-cost access to certain providers for certain conditions. It's a cash price type model. It doesn't hit our Aware network through Blue Cross Blue Shield, so we're able to go ahead and save the net savings. And for that, the $952,000 there represents actually a calendar year. So we look at these things all the time. We still find typos. So that should be January 2024 through December 2024. So that $952,000 is an annualized figure. Specifically for our medical plan, 12 months of claims were basically $25.5 million compared to $26.5 million the prior year. It's important because we look at 24 months of total claims to develop our renewals. Our medical spend represents 69% as opposed to last year, 76%, and the pharmacy, 31% this year versus 24% last year. Claims over $50,000, $15 million. Claims under $50,000 represent $9.8 million. And then we received approximately $1.3 million in pharmacy rebates. And we'd like to see that number actually small because that means we're using less specialty and brand drugs. But be it as it may, $1.3 million has come back. $200,000 is our specific stop loss, so we won't pay any more than $200,000 in our plan if someone has a claim that's over that. So if you have a $500,000 claim, we've got that stop loss protection at $200,000. We pay it, and then that $300,000 differential would be picked up by stop loss.
Director Thompson.
Yeah. So with that $200,000, does that mean that the $25 million in medical expenditures that we spent, like that we capped it at 200?
Yeah.
Or
so
it's a 25 way above and beyond, but we only paid 200, so then our spend is actually a lot.
That's a great question, Director Thompson. Essentially, we removed through stop loss protection of that $200,000 amount approximately $1 million in our current plan year.
So then our overall cost would have been $26.5 million. Is that what my understanding then?
Yeah. So let me. I thought this question might come up, so I'm ready for you. So our total claims in our most recent time frame, $25.4 million approximately. Our claims capture due to that $200,000 in stop loss is just slightly over $1 million, $1,055,000. So when we net it out, our claims capture claims are 24.2 million, or 24.4 million. So we basically subtract that, and then we are using that $24.4 million for our renewal calculation. Yeah.
So that the percentage difference where if our school district, our employees are spending or are utilizing $25 million worth of medical expenditures, 30% is coming from pharmacy. Is that what I'm reading? I mean, we're spending, let me rephrase that, $7.6 million is being spent on pharmacy. And so how do we make sure, like, let me rephrase that, is that normal? And because that seems...
Yeah, when we approach a 30% level or more, that's, we kind of pay attention. We're paying attention to it all the time, but when that goes over 30%, we focus in on that, and we're doing that now. We've been doing really good work with the Representative Insurance Committee and the district administration staff, led by Brenda and Bill, and we're looking at that. I would say what I was going to share here momentarily is that as a part of our renewal, we're still continuing, and we have done this previously, continuing to evaluate like pharmacy carve-outs where we can go ahead and deploy programs or cost-saving strategies that can actually lower our costs and try to provide some cost containment. Yeah, so we're actively doing that.
Director Carbone.
Yeah, I'm sure that Blue Cross and Blue Shield looks at the most frequent types of claims, like maybe the top 5 frequency of claims that stratas across all the claims data. Maybe they look at creating incentives to try and negate some of that. Can you share some of that with us?
Sure, Director Carbone. How I'd answer that is the vast, I would reference the 80-20 rule, right? So 20% of our population is driving 80% of our
claims.
cost,
Yeah.
right? So we need the good risk to capture the folks that are utilizing the program. And who knows, whenever one of us might be in that situation, right? So we need solid revenue, consistent revenue to be able to provide for that. When we take a look at detailed utilization reports at a group like Lakeville Area Schools and any other district, the vast majority of our claims cost is going to come from high-cost claimants that are typically going to be benefited through stop-loss utilization, right, and pharmaceutical, specifically that specialty drug category, as well as some brand drugs, in particular for us and other districts, the GLP-1 category. So it's pretty consistent throughout. And to answer Director Thompson's question again on that mix, we've seen the mix between medical spend and pharmaceutical spend, 75-25 up to 80-20, kind of right in there. 30's pushing high, right?
Director Thompson.
And would another driving factor towards that would be the design of the plan itself? Could that be driving why that number might be high itself? Because I can tell, there isn't a school board member that's part of the health plan or health insurance benefit design committee. We don't sit on that. And so you've got those that are part of the representative are making those decisions, and then you guys bring it forward, and then we vote yes or no to approve it or not. And so does the health plan itself have limitations so that that alternatives or generics are being suggested to help reduce some of those costs, which then ultimately reduce the cost for these insurance plans for our employees?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Director Thompson. The plan designs themselves, so the individual plans that employees have the option to select, not so much. And the reason is, if you've worked through an example with me, if I'm a high-cost claimant and I come down with cancer and I'm a $400,000 claimant, it really doesn't matter too much if I'm in the traditional $20 copay plan or if I'm in the $4,000 high-deductible health plan. Now, yeah, there's some incremental gain there because the employee is sharing on that deductible or they're out of pocket. But at the end of the day, the plan itself is picking up the lion's share of that expense. So that's on the medical side. If we shift over to the pharmaceutical side, this is where we've consistently taken a look at different programs to try to go ahead and keep those costs down. We're still evaluating those today, but this is where we're looking at, repatriation of pharmaceuticals, right? So they're manufactured here, they leave the United States, they're repatriated back and at a discount, right? Now, with tariffs kind of where it's at and in the news today, I don't know where that's going to shake out, but we're continuing to take a look at that, and we have looked at that. What we're doing now, specifically on the pharmacy side, is really evaluating, which we've done in the past, is evaluating a carve-out where we would kind of move away from the Blue Cross Blue Shield provided model for pharmaceuticals and go into the open market for efficiency, transparency, and ultimately cost savings, and to leverage programs that may not be available under our current TPA Blue Cross Blue Shield's umbrella.
Moving back a slide, just looking at the Amplify and Healthiest You, what's the growth that you're seeing in those two programs?
Yeah, so I think right now we're seeing Amplify, that utilization continue to tick up. We're seeing a leveling off in the virtual care, but really the leveling off for us on an annualized basis is, we're approaching, $800,000 or, $400,000 per, every 6 months. So we've definitely done extremely well in that program. We work with 8 out of 10 school districts in Minnesota, roughly a third on the medical insurance, whatever the model may be, self-insured, fully insured, or in a pooled environment. And I'd tell you, Lakeville area schools is one of the highest performing districts. Actually, the vendor that provides this, Teladoc, has seen in their public sector book of business in the country. So I would credit that to a couple things. Number one, there was early adoption in the representative Insurance Committee, and there's really been a collaborative approach with district administration and the various representatives within that committee that have really pushed that out and really created opportunities to have one-on-one interactions and education for staff at the various buildings throughout the district. If people don't know about it, they're not going to use it. So we've really seen an uptick in that, and I would say that that's driven the utilization, which is fantastic. I mean, think about it. We've had, over $1 million of claims redirection on our plan.
Yeah. Do you see any schools incentivizing use of those programs just to drive up the use and participation?
Yeah, Chair Swanson, I really haven't. In the groups that we work with, which is probably 15 to 20 districts that have deployed this type of strategy, with only 2 notable districts not having success with it, and really I can speak to those why, transition in staff and not really getting the word out. So the other ones have done very well with it. We haven't needed to incentivize it. And the reason being is that it's zero cost for an employee to either pick up the phone or access a tablet or a smartphone to access a general practitioner for general medicine, a mental health provider practitioner based on their need in that particular category, a dermatologist, a nutritionist, a dietitian, or second opinion in a specific area of need based on a diagnosis and or physical therapy. So we really haven't had to do it, just really educate people.
But I guess my question to follow up on that would be, what is the cost savings to the district if they're making that appointment via telehealth versus going in and seeing the doctor, like a nutritionist, for example?
So great question. So really, if you think about it this way, general medicine is the largest category of utilization within our virtual offering. Instead of me going and seeing a general practitioner, right, for let's say strep throat or just not feeling well, that cost, give or take, generally accepted, depending on where we're at, let's say that costs $250, right? So that's $250 that by me not going there is not hitting our plan. Now, if it's prior to the deductible, the employee is saving that. If it's after the deductible, then certainly the plan is saving that. But what we're really doing is we're creating and driving a consumerism mindset within those employees because A, it's convenient for them, and B, it's saving them money, either their own deductible or spilling over into our plan costs. So it's just that alone has driven the utilization.
Director Cameron.
I just want to, it's not a question, but commend the district, your effort, I think the HR department, and also members of the insurance committee for making us a standout district in this work. I think it shows great partnership between district office and our bargaining units like LEAF and EML, who are really trying to help our district save money. So I appreciate kind of this collective effort on behalf of the district and ultimately the Lakeville community.
Yeah. Thank you, Director Cameron.
Director Thompson.
Yeah, I think 2 years ago when I started, I think you guys launched Health ESU,
Right.
and there was a huge uptick in the utilization from our district staff, and I think that's fantastic. The more virtual options does ultimately make it a little bit less expensive or reduces our overall claims costs. Like I said, I think it was about $25 million that we spent. If not for Health ESU, it could have been $27 million. So while we redirected $1 million, that's great. But then why are we going up 5%? Like last year we went up 5%. And so, because that hits the pocketbooks. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, I'm looking at a plan here. So I believe last year a copay plan for a family of 4 cost $36,000. I think that's about right. And so a 5% increase is going to be $37,800. So we're looking at $2,000 more for this plan. I mean, let me validate. Is a copay plan family of 4? Does that cost $36,000?
So, Director Thompson, I don't have the specific plan rates in front of me, but I can answer your question.
Okay.
So there is this thing called medical inflation, medical trend out there, right? So what I would tell you is Lakeville area schools at 5% is either at trend or slightly below trend right now. So trend, depending on the geography that you're at in the state of Minnesota, is anywhere from probably 4.5% to the low to mid-teens, depending on where you're at geographically. especially if you take the state of Minnesota like you're looking at it from a top-down view, that bottom third going east to west, west to east, in that Mayo country, well, the trend down there is in the easy, mid-teens because of the impact of Mayo Clinic, right? So we know last year that there were some clinic systems out there that unilaterally put anywhere from 11 to 13% charge on their billable expenses. Well, if Aaron Casper at NIS knows that, certainly all the other clinic systems know that, and they may, what we've seen is that, they're following in line. So just the cost of the same service year over year is going up at a minimum 4.5% to 5%. So for us to be at a 5% increase year over last year, same, right? 5% last year, we're doing well. We're doing better than probably 90% of the other similarly situated school districts out there. The increases that I've seen over the last 18 to 24 months have been a rare single digit and usually in the teens, 20s, 30s, and I had a 50% increase last year that represented $4 million. So that's the kind of stuff that we're seeing. So the management of the plan, to your point, Director Cameron, there is definitely collaboration within that committee, and certainly it's not just me. I mean, I've got a team of 4 that help us. So we're looking at the data analytics and consulting district administration.
Director Carbone.
Yeah, thank you. Self-funding, claims go up and down like the stock market. It's very volatile, I understand that. Do we have a reserve?
Yes.
And to what degree, or to what amount is that?
Yeah, that's Director Carbone. Great question. So we're going to be finishing up our 4th year of self-insurance here at the end of June 30th, our plan year. We're tracking right at about 25% reserve to claims, so about $7.4 million. That is a year earlier than what our target was. We were targeting 25% after 5 years being in a self-insured environment. Really what that allows us to do is actually go back to the committee and the district administration and kind of come up with our second phase plan, right? We don't want to maintain at 25%. We'd incrementally like to grow that. I'd prefer a comfortable spot around 40% on the high side. And the reason that is that it's not necessarily the silver bullet. It's not going to save us, but what it's able to do is kind of soften out some of those future renewals. Maybe our claims and our costs would dictate in the future a 10% increase. Well, maybe we're able to leverage into that reserve a couple points or something like that to soften that down. So that's really what we're after. So great question. We're at 25% Fund 20 reserves currently.
Okay, and one more, please.
Yeah.
We don't have an aggregate stop loss. You could argue.
We do.
We do?
Yes, we do.
And what's that claim ceiling on the aggregate?
Yeah, so we're at 115% of expected claims. So basically 15% over what our aggregate total would be. Okay. We're well under that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, Director Thompson.
I do want to know if we have those numbers, like what is the cost of a health plan for our staff, if you've got that readily available?
I don't have that right in front of me.
Okay.
But I mean, the numbers that you use were relatively close. That's what they cost.
So it's about $36,000 for a family of 4.
For everything.
For everything. And how much so that sounds like a very, I think last time you said it was a very rich plan, but
we have rich components in the plan.
Yeah, it's very favorable. But how much of that does the employees are responsible for? So this 5% increase, what is the impact to them?
Yeah.
So 2.5.
Yeah. So Director Thompson, the 5% represents the aggregate increase. Okay, and that's approximately $1.5 million. So not an insignificant amount of money. The vast majority of the contracts, if not all, I think there's one that's slightly different, would basically indicate that increase would be shared 50-50. So in the aggregate, the district would be on the hook for 2.5% or $750,000 approximately. And then that remaining $750,000 would be allocated amongst the remaining bargaining units. So total cost to the district in this scenario, $750,000.
Director Thompson.
Well, we don't know, so again, we don't have the numbers. We don't have the numbers to say this is how much it's going to impact an employee, other than $750,000, divide that amongst all the employees. So ballpark, $100 a paycheck. I don't know, I'm just,
Yeah,
I guess what I'm trying to get to is that I want to understand the impact it's going to have on our staff, so that, I get that it's a 5% increase. It's better than what everyone else is doing, which is great. But again, it's still a 5% increase. But let's go ahead.
Director Cameron.
And this might be a question more for Brenda, perhaps, but my understanding is that through contract negotiation process for any bargaining unit, this is negotiated every 2 years. So the increase isn't necessarily the same in every contract, or the increase. So that's one thing, and we're going to be going through that soon for like the bulk of our employees. But also, does the Representative Insurance Committee, I want to get the right name, includes representation that were elected by the staff to represent the work of this committee, correct? So in a way, like, I appreciate the question about what is the impact on staff, but I think staff is well represented in the conversation on these increases. So I'll just throw that out there.
Okay, great questions. Yeah. So you've got on the bottom of page 3 some metrics in terms of our population, our demographics. Just moving on to some additional talking points. We've been pretty consistent in terms of our growth on our Fund 20, and you asked that question, so you know we're at about 25%. Overall, from our claims to revenue perspective, we are kind of right in that trend increase realm at about 85%. Let's see here. 98% of our high claims are driving basically just under $10 million of our total cost, and again, not unusual in this environment. And then our pharmacy costs have increased about 20%. So, we talked about that a little earlier, utilizing the brand names and the specialty drugs. So, as I mentioned, we are in the process of evaluating carve-out options to figure out how we can try to best control those costs and see what those opportunities might be. And we're still in the running for a potential 7/1 effective date. So, we have time. We just need to connect with the district administration and then circle back with the insurance committee. Mentioned that we're right in line on the medical trend. So before I shift over to dental, is there any other questions on the medical side? Overall, you guys, phenomenal position. We are really in a good position. The plan's been managed very well over the last 4 years. Okay, all right. Just finally, with dental, right now, our current claims are projected, through October 31st, we're at 1.6 million. For our plan renewal, we're projecting claims of about 1.7, so about $96,000. That represents just slightly under a 6% trend increase. We're recommending that the board approves an increase. You can see moving from rates of $47 to $50 on the single and $134 to $142 on the family. You'll notice there that we haven't had a plan increase since 2017. So essentially, we've been drawing down that reserve, and now we're at a point where we really need to capture some additional revenue. Overall, that's consistent with trying to maintain as little impact as possible for our employee groups over the past few years, because how the contracts are set up, they are essentially picking up 100% of the existing cost based on the current contract language. Now, that can certainly change as the contracts are negotiated, as we go into that season again, but for the most part, we're obviously mindful of that when we were dealing with medical increases, even at trend historically. So the other thing is that one plan change, we did get a recommendation, and we're bringing that forth on 7/1 of '25 on a renewal date. We are changing our annual maximum, bringing that down to $4,000. That's still extremely high in the marketplace, but we're bringing that down so that now we actually have a cap. That should help protect us in the market. So we had some discussions about that in the committee, and that was the recommendation. So that's what I have for you tonight.
Superintendent Baumann, do we have a proposal to approve on this? So if I'm reading this correctly, is it a proposal to increase for the renewal with an increase of 5% on medical and 6% on dental? All right. I'll make the motion, get it rolling. I will move to approve the proposed renewals for medical at 5% increase and dental at 6% increase. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Director Carbone. Is there any discussion? Director Thompson?
And just to confirm, the Benefits Committee have exhausted all of their discussions. They have reviewed these options. They have voted on it. They have approved it, and that's why it's here today.
Yes, this has been presented to
What
the
they
committee.
want.
I think Brenda has a comment.
The committee is not a decision-making body, so they don't vote on anything. They give their input, and then the administration takes that input into under advisement for our recommendation. Our recommendation, the insurance committee as well, all agreed that a 5% increase would be recommended, and the 6% increase for dental would be recommended.
Any more discussion? There being none, I'll call the matter for a vote, being first and seconded by Director Carbone. All those in favor of approving the renewal on the medical at a 5% increase and the dental plan at a 6% increase, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. All right, it passes unanimously.
Thank you very much, Chair
Thank you.
Swanson, Superintendent Baumann. Board, thank you.
On to the district poster series replacement.
Can I actually say something? I would like to make a motion that we maintain our current inclusive poster series, with the exception of the two that are currently part of an active lawsuit, as previously recommended by Superintendent Baumann.
I'll second the motion.
I mean, there may be procedural issues with it because it wasn't added to the agenda earlier, but since there's a first and a second, is there any discussion on it? We'll just move forward on it.
Yeah, first of all, Grace, I know you've prepared something, and it's been work for both you and Mr. Baumann, and so I do want to appreciate that. This basically comes from having spent some time reviewing the inclusive poster series that I think obviously went through a much more robust process and involved much more stakeholder input. I was at Eastview last Friday. They're up all over the schools. It feels disruptive and to remove them. And at the same time, I feel the posters that we are going to be presented to tonight are very similar. And so just from a fiscally responsible perspective, I don't think it's necessary for us to remove the old when they went through a very robust approval process.
Carly, can I ask, or Director Anderson, can I ask, were you asking to leave all of the posters?
No, 6.
6.
As
okay.
previously recommended by the superintendent.
Any other comments?
I have one.
Director Baker?
So I've had a lot of time to think about this and process conversations that we had last time and then this time. And I think my concern remains with the original premise of that lawsuit, which was based on our policy, District Policy 535, which was the one in question. And to date, the board has not discussed that policy or made any changes based on that lawsuit. So I guess I'm looking at it going that we're the policymakers, like the board is supposed to look at the policy, make any changes that are necessary, and then hand it off to administration where they implement the policy. And I kind of feel like the board is a little bit too in the weeds with the posters. And I'm wondering if we should just focus on the policy, make any changes to it that we need to based on the legal ramifications that we were under, and making sure that we have the right guardrails for the district with the policy, and then hand it off to administration and they can determine whether the posters meet the policy. So I kind of feel like we're doing the same thing and we're making the same mistakes, but we haven't went back to fix what the mistake was in the first place. So, I mean, that's just my opinion on it.
I guess my question is, where do you sit on the issue of the motion then, on the pending motion?
Well, thinking about the motion, like, we're making a motion to approve posters when that's the district's, I mean, that's the administrative's job to determine, like, the posters based on our policy. And we haven't discussed the policy or made any changes to the policy that was mentioned in the lawsuit. So I want to make sure that our policy's good before we determine what goes on our walls again. Otherwise, we're going to end up back in the same situation again, and someone else finds an issue with something else on our walls because our policy isn't good. Like, that's where I'm at. Like, I feel like we're skipping a beat here, but maybe it's just me. That's just my thought process around it.
Director Cameron.
I agree with you, Kim. I think our decision at, I forget what date the decision happened, did not ask the question, how do each of the designs or all of them as a collective align or not align with district policy? That is what a school board decides, not whether or not we like graphic design or wording on posters, but how does policy impact the decision? And so for me, I support the motion in the sense that I don't think we've had that discussion. I think it's a waste of resources, both staff time and financial. I realize that maybe it's only $10,000. We cut $10,000 during the budget cuts, listening to, 2 years ago when the 3 board members across from me had to cut lamps in teachers' rooms because he didn't have enough money. And so to say $10,000 is not significant, I think is dangerous and not a good sentiment to bring forward into budget conversations for the board. And as a result, I think we've not had the discussion, do posters align or not align with policy? And that is what the decision of the board should be about.
Director Nicholson.
I have a question, and I don't know how to ask it, seeing as we have closed session situations and we have open session situations. So we have certain things that were discussed in closed session. Is changing our course of action now change anything that happened in closed session? I don't know how to answer that. I don't know how we do that in public.
Well, I think that, I think the board needs to decide, like, our process and our procedure, because that was also what was brought into question, was our process and how we went through things. And then were some of the ones that were decided upon initially violating our policy, which has never been discussed or changed, or, even, I don't know, like, we haven't looked at that policy. I think that when we think about this in context of the legal situation and that current decision, just because we decide to take things down doesn't mean those things are going away yet. Like, maybe it's just on hold, like they come down and things are on hold until we determine what the policy is and what can actually go back. Because, I mean, we haven't even had a discussion of what violates policy. So of the 6, are all of them okay? Or 4 of them okay? Or 2 of them okay? I mean, I don't know, because the board hasn't had the discussion about the policy. So that's what was in question with the original lawsuit. And I think that I mean, we haven't talked about it. So I feel like we're getting ourselves in the same situation again, or we could potentially. So I'm just thinking about it from a legal ramification of, like, liability.
So what I'm thinking about then is, do we remove them, tell them just don't destroy them, have the conversation, and then you can make the determination of what you need to do after that then? Like, I
Possibly. I mean, if that's the conversation the board wants to have, like, I don't know, like, we haven't talked about the policy.
Yeah,
Then
well,
we
and
need
I
to
guess the
fix that
question is,
problem.
was the vote on policy or just, hey, we're heading in a new direction for the district?
But even if we go in the new direction, we're looking at these posters and they're similar to the ones we're taking down off the wall, but we haven't discussed what violates policy and what doesn't.
Well, and I guess that's a question if we get to the vote on approving those posters, right? So now we have two issues. I mean, obviously, I agree that we should look at our policy again in 535. But the issue really before us is whether or not we're going to approve Carly's motion to leave 6 of the 8 posters up on the wall, like reverse our prior decision from January 28th. Yeah, Director Anderson.
I guess I'm coming from a place of, I don't think there's anything wrong with the policy. I think there's different interpretations of the policy based on the poster series. We have not talked about this. I just see it as 6 of these posters were not a target, and I don't believe they violate policy. Obviously, the board would have to make that decision. And what I appreciate about what the administration is trying to do with a replacement is cause less disruption, given how many of these posters are up in our schools. And at the same time, they're very similar. And so I just ask, what are we doing?
I think from a Robert's Rules or a legal standpoint, your motion would be rescinding a previous board decision, which would mean you would need a 2/3 vote to do that. So you'd need 5 out of 7. Am I correct on the procedure on that?
I'm not exactly sure.
I think so. I think so. So
Yeah,
in
like I-
thinking
like I
about
said,
doing
I-
that, again, I still feel like we're in the weeds because I'm not just, I need to look at the policy like I do policy. Like as a board member, we do policy, and then the district implements the policy. So it should be up to the superintendent and his team to determine, here's the policy, this is what the board's agreed on. These posters meet that requirement. You know what I mean? Like, I still feel like
Yeah,
us voting on
but-
posters is not
But part of the problem
the
is,
issue.
I mean, the issue with the litigation, and when you read the case, is that, there was questions as to whether or not the board actually approved it, or whether it was outside influences that were putting their voices on the wall, therefore making it, a partially open or public forum, And so that's why bringing it to the board, while I don't know that any of these us board members want to be in the business of posters, putting the stamp on it, the board putting its stamp on it, removes that question of whether it's creating a public forum or not. So, yeah, and again, I don't know that this motion is necessarily properly in front of the board because it's not on the agenda and it wasn't added to the agenda earlier, but I want to have the discussion. So,
Well, I think it meets I think it meets that it's related to the topic, but.
Director Thompson.
Yeah, I'm using ChatGPT, which high school students should be using this. With the previous notice, if the group was informed in advance that a motion to rescind would be proposed, it does require only a majority vote. Without previous notice, no advance notice was given. It takes a 2/3 vote for those present voting. So,
sorry, I was ignoring
but the
right
motion on the
side here.
table is. Go ahead.
Director Cameron.
Thanks. I think as I've been thinking about this particular lawsuit and the relation to the posters, the district is sued often, right, because we're a large entity. As long as I've been on the board, we've heard about multiple cases. This is the only one where the school board is getting involved in the follow-up to what happens to that lawsuit. Like we've had, cases regarding special ed or other type of issues. And for every other lawsuit, we are asking the district staff to implement changes and best practices and policies based on their expertise. The board is not dictating action. And so I just don't understand why this is different than other lawsuits.
Can I just ask a clarifying question? When you're saying dictating action, do you mean in the removal of the posters or implementing a new series?
Both.
Okay.
I believe the school board's role, if at most in this case, would be to accept or set a recommendation of posters from the district, whatever, if they're the 6 or new ones, whatever it might be. And our job is, as a board, would be to ask, does this align with policy? If yes, we accept the recommendation. We do not get into the business of designing posters and what makes best sense for educational outcomes for kids. We don't have
Sure.
that expertise.
Director Carbone.
Yeah, I would suggest that it would be irresponsible for the board not to do things that would keep us out of potential litigation. And when you look at the posters, the first set of posters, and then I think Director Anderson or Director Baker mentioned that a lot of them are similar. That wasn't necessarily what we talked about on the 28th. What we talked about was revising those posters into academic focus, because what we're trying to do is put the district on an academic outcome pathway, which it is on, but the more we can direct that, the better off we are. So I'll stop there.
Director Nicholson, did you have a comment?
So I guess I don't want to be disruptive with it. I understand that piece of it, but I don't want to jeopardize any of the situations that we currently have and the opportunity to sort of take care of some of this. Now, and if that means take them down and go find a storage locker for them until we sort out policy 535 and give you clear guardrails and then give it back to you to decide what we do with it, I'd much rather do something like that as opposed to make another misstep and jeopardize what could be a potential end to a 4-year battle.
Director Thompson.
Well, I appreciate the legal component and the dialogue behind it. I think when these posters were presented to us, this board then had an opportunity to review them and decide, do we want them or do we not want them? And the intent of that design was supposed to be inclusivity posters. And that was the intent of the design. And so I think the board made that decision then, but you guys can decide how you want to vote on this motion. I do believe that the next set of posters, it's another conversation, it's a separate conversation, but let's resolve this particular motion first and decide how you want to proceed.
Any other comments or discussion? All right, there being none, the motion being made by Director Anderson, seconded by Director Cameron, I believe. I will call it to a vote. It is a motion to rescind the board's decision to remove 6 of the 8 inclusive series posters. Let's do a roll call vote. Kim, if that's okay.
Mr. Chair, could you say the motion again, just so I got
Yes, it is a motion to rescind the school board's prior vote, the January 28th, 2025 vote, to remove, essentially the motion is to remove only 2 of the 8 posters, correct? And I'm assuming we're rescinding the vote.
Yeah. Superintendent Baumann, can I ask, from a district standpoint, just thinking about the consequences of this action right now, what does that do for you and your team and the process that you've already been going through? Is this, I just want to know your personal opinion on that.
Well, I don't have a personal opinion. I have a superintendent's opinion.
That'll work.
And I feel like you're in the middle of a process that, as an ex officio, I am not a part of. And so I have to defer. We are continuing to attempt to resolve, from the administration's perspective, the last vote that the board made and navigate our way through this, but that may all be about to change here, so I really got to let that stand.
As a point of clarification, is this a 2/3 vote now or a majority vote?
Has to be 2/3.
2/3
Has to be
vote.
2/3.
Mhm. Whenever you're ready.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Well, never mind.
No, ask it.
Well,
Now would be the time, yeah.
That would be the time.
I feel like we could benefit from more consideration, and I also appreciate the time crunch. So I guess what I'm saying is, I didn't mean to create a situation of where people feel like they're not having time to think it through. But Mr. Baumann, do you feel like decisions have to be made at this point to make sure that we're able to make the moves during spring break that you would like to make?
I mean, we already made the decision, right? I mean, your motion is whether or not we're going to rescind our prior decision. So I think
Yes.
if we didn't, yeah, if people want to change their mind, they can.
I just
don't
think
know
there was
that
a
we
lot,
need to
in our
delay it.
last meeting about this, there was a lot of confusion, and I think it was all very, in terms of people thinking through the other 6, it was all just very on the spot where people did not have time to consider it, where I feel like I've taken more time, and so it feels like a rash decision and potentially a big waste of funds to do this, if 6 of them are very similar to what might be going up on the walls.
Yeah, and we might be jumping ahead on that one. So if somebody wants to abstain or change their vote, they can, but
Well, technically we can, but
Are we still open for discussion here, or where are we at right now?
We're still
we
discussing.
closed,
Okay.
we closed discussion and called it for a vote.
Yeah.
Kim?
No.
can I pass and think about it? I'm still
I think
stuck,
you have
like.
to, yeah.
I'm gonna say no.
Carly Anderson?
Yes.
Amber Cameron?
Yes.
Brett Nicholson?
No.
Brian Thompson?
No.
Matt Swanson?
No. All right. So that's 5 noes, 2 yeses, and the motion fails. I think we'll turn this back over to you, Superintendent Baumann.
Thank you. Can I get the charts up for the current presentation, please? So before we get started, and because we just went through that discussion, which I do appreciate, where we stand today, where we're at as I talk about this presentation, I think it would be helpful. I don't know, Kim, are you able? Can you? Yeah, I want to just. If you look at the title of this chart, it says Academic Excellence and Inclusion Poster Series. Those words come from the motion that was voted on. I'm trying to isolate the exact wording here.
It should be what's in blue is the final motion.
Motion to vote on the amended motion, which is to remove the inclusive series posters and replace it with an academic excellence theme and whatever additional variations we agree with as far as including inclusivity in that discussion. That was the motion. And so I want to just be clear, while there's discussions about what that communication is, having done this for a while, I pay attention to the details because I want to be as close to that as I can possibly be. So the title here is Academic Excellence and Inclusion Poster Series because that was the motion that was voted on and accepted. So that's why you see what you see there. And I'll talk a little bit more about context. Maybe you should run this button. And first of all, just what are the key considerations? One thing I did not assume is that we would have this conversation and I would just put something out there and then ask you what you thought about it later. I do think that there's a board obligation based on the history of all of this to vote. So we will be removing the posters that are up, and that will happen over spring break. That information has gone to my subordinate leadership across the district, and we are moving down that path. And that is in accordance with the board vote and direction that I just read to you, the motion that was articulated. So that's part of the context, and I'll talk about when I get to the process chart about the remaining context of why I'm bringing it here, other than to say, I need your approval. I don't assume anything with regard to this. So to that point, these are the things and the considerations that we have had in this district. These are the things that were worked out and I think approved after I left the district under the last leadership and remain in place after my review and saying, yes, we need to stay on this path. So next chart. So the creation process of what we're talking about right now, the context of this, and what I am seeking to do, and I think it was mentioned by Director Anderson earlier, is to try to manage the transitional solution in strategic and operational methodology. Transitions are your point of most risk. And we are in a transition process, and I am trying to do the best that we can with some limiting factors. First limiting factor is we have been given guidance by the Board of Education or the school board on what it is that we want in terms of context of any future poster series, and we're trying to be faithful to that. Another limiting factor is, quite honestly, we're not professional poster makers either. And I'm sure this process where we sit right now today falls short. And I've had a few really good people point that out to me from our community, and that's fair. Again, the context being I'm trying to establish something transitional, so another limiting factor is really literally a time factor. And we want to be true and faithful to the requirements that we have from the school board and removing the existing posters, which is, I think, our direction. So a vote, I think, is the only methodology I could use in the protocols that we have and the processes and procedures of board business. So that's where we are. Doesn't mean we have to land here, stop here, or be done here. We can do a more robust process. More time, more resources to get things like efficacy from whether the message is hitting or not hitting, those kinds of things, that takes, I think, more resources than is available. So I try to keep it in-house with our staff, which is the first comment up there. Try to use and leverage what we know and what has landed in our community with regards to the current poster series. Get as much internal feedback as I could, again, because of the timeline. I've also learned some things talking to attorneys about proprietary nature of the poster series we've already created, because there are things going on outside of the school district with regard to those posters, and that's all fine and dandy, but my challenge with that is the proprietary nature of it, and anything that we would create in the future being a proprietary nature as well. So all these factors are I think, in play. So we tried to put together what we have here as a bridge to whatever we want to do in the future, and to buy us a little bit more of a runway to do maybe a more comprehensive poster design series, if that's the will of the community and the board as represented by the school board. So we're working through all of that, and I'm going to have Grace share with you the 9 total posters with the 7 different designs, and we're trying to deal with the academic excellence mindset, demonstrate care and respect for our students and our staff. Yes, sir. Sorry, I'm
Director
sorry.
Nicholson.
Board Chair.
So there was your previous slide had the mission or our vision statement. And I'm curious as to why it cuts short of what the vision statement is on the website. And what I mean by that is to provide a safe, respectful, engaging, rigorous, and collaborative learning environment for all students, family, and staff where every person belongs, is valued, and can succeed.
Yeah, okay, that's my fault because I didn't put the whole thing on there.
I'm curious because that's kind of an important thing for me right now. I think the vision statement that we have embodies everything we want to try to be. And I think that it's a perfect place to be in terms of what we would put on our walls. Every person belongs. Everybody's valued. Everybody can succeed. 3 phrases. If you argue with that, I'd be shocked. But I don't know why I want to make sure that we don't forget those. Those, I think, are exactly what we're talking about in this entire thing here.
I do want to point out that we had a poster that said, "Everyone is welcome, everyone belongs."
I understand that.
So this is my original, coming back to, like, this was why I struggled with these posters, because we have some that are very similar and they look very nice. And granted, I appreciate the sentiment to at least vote to keep 6 or some of them. I'm still going back to the policy, and we haven't had that discussion, so, okay, whatever, continue.
May I, sir? Yep. Okay. And again, trying to be actually aligned not to the resolution, because that's not a resolution. That's a motion with a vote. That's a directive as far as I assimilate it. Okay, so that's, again, not good language on my part on these charts. So if you will, we just want to walk through what we've put together, notwithstanding that the process might need to be more holistic if we're going to go further with this, and that the intent is to provide a bridge under the scenario that we exist under. Okay, Grace.
Okay. I will just take a moment to introduce myself, as I haven't stood before this board yet. I'm Grace Olson. I'm the Communications Director for Lakeville Area Schools. So I will just briefly walk us through the proposed posters so we can have some discussion here. The first design has both a secondary option geared towards older learners and a younger option for our elementary learners.
Can I ask why the person in the wheelchair was removed from the elementary version?
There is a person in the wheelchair in the green in the bottom right corner. She does have a wheelchair. I think just the placement is a little harder to see.
You can't see it, though. Yeah. Okay. I just feel like it should be more prevalent and visible, like it is in the secondary one, because it is the only poster we have that represents disabilities.
Okay.
Just my opinion.
Our second poster, I think, is pretty straightforward. Poster 3 also, I think, is pretty straightforward. Poster 4 was focused really around the growth mindset concept.
So no one's going to comment on that one?
Oh, I have lots of comments.
Okay, I just feel like I'm the only one commenting, because I'm looking at it.
You can keep
and
commenting, yeah.
There's a lot of negatives on it, I guess. Like when I feel like the top part's okay, but like the bottom part, I just feel like it's.
Doesn't align with PBIS, which we
I would-
kind of push a lot of different
I
stuff
would
in our
only
schools.
say that there's, I mean, and I'm just thinking of a book I read with my kids, like, kids say this all the time in school, like in elementary school, I feel like, where they're saying, I can't do this, and I feel like the message is right now in
Perseverance.
this moment, but the idea is to persist so that you
Yes.
can learn.
Well, I agree with the sentiment of perseverance. I like the first part. We're getting there, right? Like, frame it positive.
Director Cameron.
You might know how I feel. But that is, I have lots of ideas for the posters too. That is not, in my opinion, what a board is should be making decisions about. We are not designing posters. We're not a design firm. We don't have expertise in graphic design, nor do we have expertise in child development. And so again, for me, if posters align with policy, that is the decision we make, not in deciding which we like. And if we feel like these don't align with policy based on the recommended set that's been brought to us, we can make a recommendation that these go back to the district staff for refinement. But I don't want to sit, I don't mean to be so harsh, but I don't want to sit here and start talking about, I like the word yet, but not the word can't. Like, that is, to me, we need to focus on the role of a school board, and if we don't like this, then it's not our job to fix it, it's our job to direct work.
And
Can I ask you a follow-up?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
That's where I've been like the entire time, where I'm struggling to vote on posters or whether we remove them or keep them when we haven't discussed the policy. That's where I'm
But
stuck.
the reality that you're both going to have to deal with is we're not going to do a new poster series or have a new poster series if we don't vote on it. I mean, the district is not going to do that again. So then the question is, are you okay without putting up new posters? Like, are you saying, let's just get out of the poster business and leave that to the teachers to
No, not necessarily.
create an inclusive
I'm fine with having posters. My sentiment is that, just like the insurance proposal, we asked a bunch of questions. We took insurance recommendation from the committee that developed it, and we approved it.
Yep.
This is the same thing to me. We take recommendations, we maybe ask some questions. If it's not ready for a vote, it can go back to staff or under the direction of the superintendent. But we are not, like with insurance, we did not start choosing which pharmacies we could use or which health systems. That's not the purview of the board. And I'm just going to keep reiterating that. This is not the level of work I believe that Lakeville School Board should be at. We should be at a higher level.
Thank you. Director Nicholson.
I actually agree with that, and I love that comment. And to that end, I think that we should consider the marketing principles of branding, maintaining consistency, one voice, one color scheme, if it's coming from the board. If we are the ones sitting here deciding that we want to do a poster series, it should be a Lakeville branded type of thing. There's 8 messages here. When any organization goes out and does a rebrand or tries to create a brand image, they stick with one thing. They stick with just do it. They stick with, moving forward. They stick with whatever it is. I would argue that, again, our vision statement, our mission statements, our core values, I'm staring at them. If we are going to authorize stuff to go up on our walls, why don't we stick to that? Why don't we let the schools do the things that they do, put up the kids' artwork, decide how they want their school communities to interact with everybody? They're doing it today. You go to any one of these schools, and there are hundreds of examples of ways they are trying to get inclusion and participation from the kids in the building. They do a fantastic job. I think our principals are very aware of that. They want the kids to be seen on the walls. They want the kids to see themselves on the walls. I think it's great. I think from our vantage point, to your point, if we are going to talk about putting something on our walls, I think it better 100% align with our mission, our vision, and our core values, and we shouldn't be trying to do anything else. Nobody in the state of Minnesota is doing a poster series except us, and we're the only ones in the news and getting sued over it and having this battle. Can't we just exit the trauma here and just be done with that? And again, back to you. You can take it. Mr. Baumann, please do what you guys do. I would like to make a motion to step away from this right now. I don't want to do this. I don't want to vote yes or no per poster. I have no interest in that.
Right, so what's the motion for that? Because
My
we
motion-
haven't discussed the policy.
Yes.
Right, I agree with you, Brett.
I want to back away and not, you put this on hold or go back to the drawing board or whatever it means to do that. We need this, huh?
Not a motion.
There's 3 motions in there.
Deciphering through your intent here, but
So I make a motion not to proceed with this right now, with this poster series.
So to table it?
Yeah, no. Are you going to postpone the issue or just to vote no in approval of these posters?
We already voted to say that they can move forward with something if they want to move forward with something. So
Did we vote that?
No.
well, we made a motion.
They were supposed to come back to us.
I think we'd have to rescind our previous vote and
Okay.
remake a
I'm
motion.
not- I'm not doing
I mean,
all that
That's
again.
what we voted on, is this. So
Yeah.
you'd have to have 2/3 vote.
I don't mean to cut-
Let
I
the
don't mean to cut you
discussion
off,
go.
so you get a
Let
little
the
more
discussion
comments.
go. I'll pause
Carly,
for a second.
Director Anderson. Sorry.
I mean, I don't know if you were before me, but I feel very similarly to Amber, and I think Brett. I think at this point we direct our superintendent and our communications department to, or I don't know if this is what you're saying, but to make a decision. And to me, there are tons of things up on the walls in our schools that a principal could decide if a teacher is putting something up on the walls that doesn't align with policy, and someone could make a complaint that ends up coming before our board, but otherwise I have no idea why we're voting on making any change.
So maybe the motion is that we take the 2 posters down immediately. Then the board,
We've already made the motion, though, for that.
well, I know,
so
this is a new one that you would, it would be a rescinding motion, right? So you're making the motion to take those 2 down immediately.
We've already voted to
And then
rescind,
we
though.
work on the policy, and then the district decides on the rest.
We've already gone down that one, though.
Director Thompson? Just a second, guys. Director Thompson.
Kind of.
So I was very patient. But yes, so thank you for sharing these poster designs. We are not professional poster makers, but we are responsible for our schools and what they look like and how they feel and the culture within it. And so when I look at these poster designs, I do feel it's my responsibility to provide feedback on how they make me feel and how I think it would make our community feel. And poster 1A, be somebody who makes everybody feel like somebody. While I like that line, but like I'm not going to make a 8th grader, make someone else feel better. Like they're 8th graders. And so the intent of the entire inclusive series posters that we voted originally not to do was because they weren't inclusive enough, because there's no way to draw the line on who makes it or who doesn't make it. So in the picture on the right where you say, Director Baker, where's a person with a wheelchair? That is the entire reason why we decided not to do inclusive series posters. I wanted academic excellence posters. Every step counts. Success starts now. Learning is a superpower. Excellence takes persistence. Growth requires effort. Knowledge empowers you. Those are the kind of words that I was expecting out of this design versus, you matter. Everyone is welcome here. Believe in the power of yet. While I appreciate the cursive, I don't think my daughter knows cursive, and I don't know if we teach that. And so it is a very negative approach, the yet, and I would expect more positive can-do attitude. And so with that being said, these seem like you said are similar to what we said no to. And so if there's since the last motion we said come back and make academic excellence posters and some inclusivity posters, and then we would vote on that. But obviously we've missed the mark. And keep in mind, this is the second time. We already received it the first time. And so this is another revision. And so I feel that the district probably needs more clear guidance on what to do next on these posters. So I'll make a motion, because I like your idea about the vision statements, whatever. Everyone, what is it? Everyone belongs.
Everyone belongs, everyone is valued, everyone can succeed.
And that's on our website. And that's academic focus, and it's inclusive enough, I would assume. Have 3 different versions of that, and bring that back next week. No kids, no hands.
Can I just want to ask a clarifying question based on what you said. Remembering the board discussion around the posters, like I said, there were 2 issues. There were 2 posters that were specifically named in a lawsuit, and it was also our process. So the board voted to take them all down. But the discussion of the board members was that some of the other posters we felt were fine. It was just, we were trying to right the wrong based on how our policy was written and how it was interpreted. The 2 of the posters didn't meet the policy, which again, we still haven't discussed. So I'm going to beat a dead horse with this as much as I can. So I don't think a majority of board members think that some of these other posters are not okay. Like, we've already said everyone is welcome is fine, and one of the posters says everyone is welcome and everyone belongs, which is part of our mission statement. So again, that fits the mission statement of Lakeville Schools.
Sorry. All right, just so we're clear, I just want to make sure we don't skip over Brett. Did you make a motion to postpone or no?
No, he
Okay.
didn't. I didn't. I'm
So
not
then the
doing
motion,
that right now.
so from Director Thompson is, can you clarify?
Yes. But before I do, I want to go back to Director Baker's comment. And so I agree, those words are good, but I think it's the design because they had people, hands, that when you look at it from an inclusivity lens, we had a gap. And that was the lens that I was looking at it. Other board members could be looking at that decision with different perspectives, but that was the lens that I was looking at it. And so if the intent was inclusivity focus, it didn't hit the mark for me as a board member, and it was presented to me, and that's why I voted no. But the motion that I think that I would like to make is that everyone survive. Everyone
survives.
Not survives.
Everyone belongs, everyone's valued, and everyone can succeed.
Hold on.
And so,
but,
wait.
All right.
I'm making a specific motion to provide direction for the district.
On the poster series.
On
that
the
we're
poster
pushing.
series.
Okay.
Everyone belongs, everyone is valued, everyone can succeed. Have all three, no kids, no hands, nice design, 3 different versions, bring something back next week. Simple.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
It is seconded by Director Nicholson. Any discussion?
The conversation.
Amber, I think you had your hand up earlier. Did you want to comment?
Well, no, it doesn't apply to this motion.
Okay.
But I'll say it anyways. I was going to make a motion, but this is not a motion. I don't think our board is going to have a productive conversation and movement on this issue. I think we're wasting our staff resources in this conversation and going forward. I know a lot of time has already been put into this. It has taken away from our district's ability to communicate in normal, like what we would normally be doing. I'm sad. I'm going to use the word sad for our kids when they come back from spring break, that there won't be something on the walls. I'm not going to lie. I was hoping that this would be a summer decision. However, what my gut says right now is that we don't make any posters, that we just move on. We're never going to agree. I like your sentiment. I have no evidence if that results in anything good for kids, these statements. And so I don't want to spend resources, I don't want to spend staff time making products that we don't know has an outcome for kids. So my motion would be we're not going to make posters. We'd have to rescind the other vote to take them all down and be done.
We have Director Anderson, Baker, Carbone, and then Nicholson in that order.
I have no idea why we would be being that directive about what the district should be doing. We have all agreed we are not poster makers. We can certainly say, and I think we haven't even gotten through all of your posters yet. And so, yet.
Good job.
Not yet.
Good
Not yet.
I think there are multiple posters here that were aiming to meet the directive of the board, and that was where our role was in that moment. I still don't necessarily agree with it, but that was our role in that moment. And I don't think we get so specific about what that's the administration's job, in my opinion. So I completely disagree with that movement forward. So, yes.
Director Baker.
I would like to amend the motion to say that the board will give the administration authority to determine what posters, past or present, fall within the mission value of the district, that fall within the capacity of what our district mission is, and that the board have further discussion about policy 535.
I think you completely gutted his motion, though, if you...
I can amend it that way. I just need a second.
Is there a second to amend? Well, can you clarify what the motion is exactly?
The motion is, okay, we'll go with his original poster, but then the motion is to amend that to also include past or present posters that fit within the district mission, and letting the administration have the authority to determine which ones fit with the school mission statement, as you so stated in your original motion, and the board will continue discussion of policy 535.
Yeah, I don't think you'd have to revoke the prior motion because you're giving them authorization to essentially override our prior decision of the board and resuscitate signs or posters that we've already removed.
Well, they're the same statement, so is it
Follow the
really?
procedure.
Well, they're not all
Same
the same.
statement.
I
They're
think
not
the
all
current
exactly
motion
the
would also require that. What you're asking to put on posters is not, is that academic excellence? It's not
doesn't fit
inclusion
with that either,
necessarily, so.
Either way,
Matt-
it requires 5 votes.
Let's get out of the poster business. Sorry, but I wanted to hear the discussion, and I want to, I will vote no on that, and as soon as that goes around, no, I will say the motion.
Hold on. Director Carbone.
Yeah, please.
Hold on.
If
Said
I-
after.
Yeah, if I may, thank you, Chair. Director Cameron, I agree with you 100% here. We got into the poster business, I understand, by mistake.
Let's get closer. No, it's on. You just got to sit closer.
I'm sorry. All right, thank you. Director Cameron, I agree with you 100%. We need to get out of the poster business. We got into the poster business, my understanding is by mistake. Why the administration, why the board is in the poster business, I don't understand. Via lawsuits, via board disagreement, you just go right down the list. I don't understand why we need to be a board or an administration that does posters. And if I may, I'm trying to find out what happens in schools. I've been to multiple schools in the last 3 weeks. Let me pat, is the principal here from McGuire Middle School? I know there were some principals here before. Okay, if I may. If I can pat McGuire Middle School principal on the back, or whoever does this, I walk in as a third-party observer. I go down the hall, main hall, right by the cafeteria where everybody comes every day. I see a banner, big banner, Road to Graduation, A, B, C, and D. Perfect. Academic, gives kids direction, perfect. I go down the hall a little further, main hall. I see painted a mural on the wall, 10 feet high, 12 feet long, United States flag. On it, We the People. On it, Washington Monument, Iwo Jima raising the flag, Statue of Liberty. That mural is a history lesson from the founding of our country to the liberty that this country has given millions of people over time. I think that's an academic poster. I think that when you go around to the schools, they're doing pretty well. Back to Director Nicholson's comment, I think the schools are doing very well with their walls and what they're doing and how they're teaching. I'm going to go back again and say I agree with let's get out of the poster business.
I'll make a quick comment, and then I think yeah, I mean, the poster series, obviously, we had our issues that kind of landed in our lap. I mean, I do agree that I've heard a lot of people say that there's value in seeing themselves represented on a poster. The challenge we're facing is how do you put everybody on a poster? How do you represent everyone so somebody doesn't feel left out? Because we've heard that as well. Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, I appreciate the comments of Brian Cohn earlier today. Like, you know, we voted to remove this series, and a lot of these signs look a lot like the old ones, you know? So how are we moving the ball forward or addressing, you know, academics, if that's going to be our push? But yeah, I don't think we're the experts in signs, but if we are required to make this vote, then we're required to make the vote. I mean, if we're going to approve these, if we're going to have posters, the school board needs to approve these for the reasons we've discussed, and as the superintendent is asking us to do. So, Director Thompson.
Yeah, I am in alignment, and the reason I made the motion was because I thought we had to have something, and so from what I'm hearing is that we want to get out of the poster business, and if that's the case, per ChatGPT, I request permission to withdraw my motion so I can make a new one.
We might still be stuck on Kim's motion.
No, there wasn't a
if
second
you-
on that one.
Or was there a second?
Well, we
to
didn't
Kim?
we didn't give them time to have a second, but
Yeah.
I'll withdraw so that Brian can.
Amber.
This is not a motion, so I'm not going to get ahead of you.
I think we'll allow you to withdraw. We don't need a second on that, right? So we're clear. The table's clean.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment about.
Because we had Brett's original motion that I made an amendment to. You're withdrawing yours too.
I withdrew right away.
Okay.
I want to make a comment about what you shared about representation. I hear kind of the argument that if we can't represent all, we shouldn't have any. I strongly disagree with that. I think our district on a daily basis is profiling students throughout our community, doing great work. Not every picture, not every story highlights every child in our community, and it is okay to have representation that highlights what is going on in our district and showing students. I mean, there's photos all over our buildings with, 2 kids, 4 kids. Not everyone is going to be in everything, and I think it's a mistake to limit our celebration of the people in our district. If we say, if a picture doesn't include every single possible representation of a human, we shouldn't celebrate anyone. I don't think that's a good way to go.
And that's not what I intended to say. What I said is if we're approving a certain set of posters and they don't represent certain groups, we're going to hear it from those groups, right? And so I don't think the policy prohibits, teachers from putting things up right now that celebrate certain groups. Yeah.
I would just say we're not hearing that about anything else the district puts out. And so I think we have to stand up for that good communication is about highlighting different groups at different times.
Yeah. Director Nicholson.
So I agree with you, and I think the schools do a great job, and I think we should, again, stop trying to be in the poster business. So to that end, I agree.
Hold on. Yeah, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Carly.
I just want
That
to
one.
clarify, because it sounds like everybody's wanting to move out of poster business, but I do want to clarify, and this is probably more of a question for Mr. Bauman. I think one of the reasons why you were wanting to do something or to replace, is just like we're talking about the disruption that maybe we don't see it in some schools that these signs are, but I certainly see it in some schools that there's heavy use of these signs. So is there concern do you have any concern if we were just to say, take them down, don't put anything up?
Well, we don't really know where that's going to go. I think clearly the challenge is, are we in the poster business or not? I'd just like to see that play out, and I can figure it out from there. The challenge, I think, across the system is how do we, in action, do the things that we need to do for all of our kids? And I'm just focused on that, is kind of the bottom line. So,
Director Tom.
Now that I have withdrawn my motion, I'll make a new one. I make a motion that we not replace the poster series and keep the existing timeline in place.
I'll second that motion.
All right, there's a motion to not replace the existing, wait, can you say one more time?
Not to make a replacement poster series and keep the existing timeline in place.
Okay, so continue with the timeline to remove the existing inclusive series posters and not replace those with anything.
Correct.
All right. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
It's seconded by Director Carbone. Any discussion? Amber.
My only question is procedural here. We haven't rescinded the vote that happened on whatever date it was, where we said there would be a poster series. So I feel like, given our earlier conversation, that's the vote that needs to happen first, is
Because
amending
this is
that.
yeah, this is
Maybe, and that's
rescinding
maybe it's an amendment to that motion. I'm not sure how it works, but.
Because the direction was to do a poster series, so this is going back on a previous
Sure.
decision.
So we're going to amend or partially revoke the prior vote? Yes. All right, which would require, again, 2/3.
5 out of 7.
All right. So Seconded still, I'm assuming, Director Carbone? All right,
So
discussion.
I have some questions on that. So we're basically going back on our previous decision where we're taking all the posters down and gave the district direction to do something else. Yet all of our discussion has been about, well, the things in the building seem okay and everybody's making good decisions about what's going on walls, except for, the poster series that we're voting to take down or have voted to take down. So I guess I don't understand why we're not giving the district authority to replace it with what they see fit based on our policy and
Well, they sort of are,
so then
but
we're
I
just
think
not letting them put anything on the walls? I
No,
think that really leaves it open. I don't
I
understand.
don't think that's what we're saying. We're not doing another district-sponsored poster series, as in, this board is not going to sanction and say, we want you to put these things on the walls, and it's going to cost us money to do it. At this point in time, we've had the turmoil. You know what? The schools, we have leadership at the schools. We have leadership right here. I'm fully confident that he will manage what we need to do. And as a district, I'm very comfortable with the idea of not necessarily directing that we should have this overarching set of posters right now. I like that idea. I think it.
I understand that, and then I get where that's coming from. Are we going to have discussion on the policy at a later date so that we can, like I
Please.
said, go back and
Yes,
fix
please.
all of the things that were in place prior to this
Yes.
situation? Okay.
Yeah.
Director Anderson.
Can we grant any funding for schools to do their own replacements?
They have a budget.
Yeah.
Do they have a budget for that?
Schools have an allocation, not specifically for posters or, no, not specifically, but they do have a allocation to each school, with a potential to use it that way. But I'd rather not get into that because that's really getting into the weeds. Just my 2 cents, which I'm not supposed to give in those matters. But yeah, I would like to just be clear on what the direction is from the board with regard to district poster series, and maybe we can figure what's next out there. I can work with the leadership. I can work with, with Ms. Pop and try see if we can figure out another path. But again, we got to get stronger in our actions as a school system. I'll say that.
Okay, thank you.
Director Carbone.
Chair, point of clarification. I'm trying to understand, is Director Thompson's motion valid and on the table now to vote on?
Yes, we're just having discussion on it. So.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure it was moving in a lot of directions.
Go ahead, sir. What's your question? Director Baker, I believe you're thinking that do we need to rescind the previous motion?
Right.
And then we make a new motion because it was already a decision that that the board has decided and voted on, correct? Okay, does that
Whether we-
require a 2/3 or a majority?
2/3.
2/3, so 5 out of 2 have to decide to rescind the last motion to create academic and inclusivity posters. And then if it passes, another motion can be made for this new direction, which is parliamentary procedure. So I will make the motion to rescind, I will make the motion to rescind the academic and inclusivity series posters. Is there a second?
So the motion is just to rescind that portion?
No, we have to do that first because it was
Rescind the
already
whole-
voted on.
Rescind the whole thing?
Yes, and then a new one can be made for the new direction.
Which would be just to remove the
But not-
inclusivity posters?
Correct. No, we have already did that.
Yeah. Well, what?
Rescinding the motion, so
Oh, the previous motion had to add academic excellence
it was
posters.
all in one.
Got it, all right.
Yeah.
Got it. So then, All right, so then, so we apologize for those that are confused.
Yeah.
But the previous motion from last 2 weeks was to rescind, the decision was to remove the inclusivity posters and replace it with academic excellence posters, okay? And I'm sorry, and
With
inclusive
inclusion.
posters, yep. And so, since half of that is already being done, then I would assume that we'd want to make a new motion to say, we do not want academic excellence and inclusivity posters, we want no posters. Correct?
No, I think the question is procedurally whether you can rescind a part of the motion and
You
not
have to
the full
rescind the
motion.
whole motion.
Or if we have to rescind the whole motion and then just vote to remove the remove the inclusivity poster series and then be done. Because then there would be no academic excellence directive.
And then there'd be no replacement or anything like that?
Mhm.
Okay.
And then we're out of the poster business.
Okay, go ahead.
I-
So
we're back to our motion to rescind.
So there's two motions that need to be made, one to rescind and one to remove the inclusivity series posters, and then that's it. Correct?
That's how I see it.
Yeah, that's what it,
Okay. I make a motion to rescind. I'm sorry, Director Nicholson?
You realize this goes against like everything that I believe in. Like as an educator, as a teacher, like this is like me voting against my own kid. Like, we're taking down posters that make him feel important, that make all students feel important. And then we're saying there's nothing that can replace it, that there's no statements that everyone can believe in. I mean, my God, like we can't even say everyone is welcome. Like this, I'm sorry, but like if we can't even like support our kids, like I don't even know what my kids are doing in this district. Like seriously? Like I'm sorry, like it's like you're telling me to vote against my family. I'm not voting on this.
Director Thompson.
What a sad state of the world if we can't even say a statement that everyone is welcome. What a sad state. I need a recess. Seriously.
Okay.
Take a recess. All right. Sure, call.
Yeah, we're going to take a recess. And we're back. During our little recess, I did check, and you can partially rescind a prior motion. So it's an amendment of a prior motion previously adopted. It does require a 2/3 vote because no prior notice was given. So I can't remember where we left off last, but in who made the motion. I think you may have. So
That's fine.
would you like to amend your motion or just withdraw it and then make a new motion?
Sure. I withdraw it. Are you okay with that?
I'm okay with that.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to not replace the poster series.
How about the motion would be to amend the January 28, 2025 vote to remove the requirement that we replace the inclusive series posters with, yeah.
Yep.
All right, is there a second?
I think it would be, you're amending the motion to remove the requirement for a district-issued poster series.
Correct.
Correct.
right,
Yes.
yes.
Second.
We'll piecemeal it together here. All right, so there is a first and a second, and just to clarify, and we'll discussion here in a second, to amend the prior motion from January 28th to require the replacement of by a district series, poster series. District poster series. Is there any discussion?
Yes.
Director Nicholson.
So, to be clear, there's no directive that we're saying you can't say everyone is welcome, that you can't have our vision statement, our mission statement. Like, we're not directing anything, we're saying policy. So, follow policy 535. What we are doing is getting out of this poster series only, not a removal of everything off the walls. This is this poster series.
As a district.
As a district. That's it. Nothing else. Is that clear for, that's what we're saying.
Any other discussion or comments? All right. Do a roll call vote.
Get the motion one more time, just so we're clear.
Yeah. So the motion is to amend the January 28, 2025 motion to remove the approval or the directive in that motion to require the school district to create a new poster series.
Kim Baker? Yes.
Yes.
Carly Anderson?
Yes.
Amber Cameron?
Yes.
Matt Swanson?
Yes.
Brett Nicholson?
Yes.
Paul Carbone?
Yes.
Ryan Thompson?
Yes.
All right, the motion passes unanimously. There being no further business, I move to adjourn. Second by Director Cameron. All those, all those in favor to adjourn, say aye. Aye. All right, we're adjourned.